Welcome, everyone, to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. As you stroll in here, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Hello to everyone in the chat, Bethany, D, Sammy, Tim. I've not heard much about the Caleb Flynn case, Tim, but tonight I wanted to go over the Prince Andrew thing, just as a little bit of a change of pace. We'll probably talk about Nancy Guthrie again tomorrow. But this is big news here, right? And some people are saying, oh, the whole Nancy Guthrie thing is to simply distract from this, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think some people might be happy that it happened to distract from it, but I don't think it was the cause. So we're going to go over CoffeeZilla. To me, he's one of the best in the business when it comes to uncovering fraud in cases like this. So that's pretty cool. And also, I mean, and the other people we follow go over the case too. Law and Crime Network did. Richard Tony Bruschi does. Megyn Kelly does. So everyone does. What up there, Mac? Mac with the new name. Prince Andrew can't sweat until he's hidden. And there are certainly some pictures of him sweating too. You better believe it. Hello there, Jolly. Welcome. Let's pop into this here. This is CoffeeZilla, for those who don't know.
Prince Andrew has been arrested because of the Epstein files. He got stripped of his title, and now the king is saying, let me state clearly, the law must take its course. I have learned with the deepest concerns the news about Andrew and the suspicion of misconduct in public office. Now, if you're like me, you'd think that misconduct is related to women and the accusations that have been levied against the prince. But that is not the case. It's actually about the leaking of private information while serving as the UK's special representative for international trade and investment. This is because it was discovered that the Duke would sometimes forward information to Jeffrey Epstein that was obvious.
So did you catch that? That was big right there. What he's actually being charged with is minor in comparison. It kind of reminds me of Al Capone getting arrested for tax evasion instead of murder and the other things that he did. That's kind of similar to what's going on with this. Of all the things Prince Andrew could be getting arrested for, he's getting arrested for that. And I'll go over it again so you can hear it.
While serving as the UK's special representative for international trade and investment. This is because it was discovered that the Duke would sometimes forward information to Jeffrey Epstein that was obviously sensitive, like this, Helmand high-value commercial properties for foreign investment, or this, a trip report for Vietnam, Singapore, Hong Kong, Shenzhen. Obviously, the former Prince Andrew would have access to insider information or confidential information as part of his role, and forwarding that to a financial trading file is probably not a great idea. This is also deeply concerning because it blows a hole in Prince Andrew's big lies where he said he cut off Jeffrey Epstein in the late 2010s, because this is right about the time that he's engaging him once again in all of this contact. So for him to previously had said, oh yeah, I found out he was a bad guy and I cut him off, I had to travel to visit him to cut him off. Suddenly that doesn't hold water when emails come out where you're sharing possible state secrets with this guy. Here, Andrew, the former Duke, is sending a message to Jeffrey Epstein asking, I am checking, but as this is a U.S. institution, do you know of anyone who might take a look? Talking about a company called Aria Petroleum, which was sent to him, which says the company needs a $200 million working capital line due to significantly increased business from U.S. DOD. So Andrew would have had access to all this deal flow, all these things, and it looks like, at least in some instances, he would actually seek possible investment from Jeffrey Epstein for some of these companies.
And on a side note, Livin knows a wizard is neither late nor early, just on time. But I am proud of her for reaching out to other members of the community to make sure we're all okay. So I'm very happy that she did that.
Call back your mind to this interview because it's so important to realize how this guy has lied to our faces for years before we address the bigger element.
I felt that doing it over the telephone was the chicken's way of doing it. I had to go and see him and talk to him.
Well, there you have it. Prince Andrew.
Did you hear that? He's saying he had to go in person to tell him something. He couldn't just, and that's why he had to go to see him on the island.
says he had to go see and tell Epstein personally that, oh, we can't be friends anymore because you're convicted. I can't do that for you. And this is late in December 2010, where he says he went to cut off Jeffrey Epstein because he now knew that he's a convicted. But again, if you look at the dates of all of these deals being passed along to Epstein, all these messages being passed along, it's right around the 2010, specifically December 2010 line, where supposedly he had one thing in mind, and that was to cut off Jeffrey Epstein. Actually, he might have been passing along state secrets. Now, obviously, a formal investigation by the UK police is...
So clearly, former Prince Andrew here is full of it in many things, right? You just can't trust the word he said. I mean, he's also said he can't sweat, which is also ridiculous and absurd as well.
Going to commence. But that's what this arrest appears to be about so far: misconduct in public office, his responsibilities to the people of the UK at the time, and how these emails could have affected that. But it's this larger context of Andrew lying about his association with Epstein that I want to bring to the front of this next conversation, because obviously Prince Andrew's biggest problem with the Epstein files isn't necessarily the confidential information he shared. It's obviously the allegations made against him, specifically by a woman named Virginia Giuffre, who was captured in an image with Prince Andrew at the time when...
And this is the notorious woman, right? She's no longer with us, unfortunately, but Virginia Giuffre, and there is former Prince Andrew right there. And then there's our other person, Ghislaine Maxwell.
She was a young lady, and then later she alleged to have been trafficked to Prince Andrew and that they had together. Andrew was asked about this in an interview and famously denied it. Not only denied it, but said it all couldn't have happened because he didn't.
Oh, listen to that. So what does this remind you of? A narcissist doing anything they can to avoid accountability, right? And what do they say when a narcissist... Well, they'll say this: narcissists are allergic to accountability, and when they're caught, they'll break out in excuses, blame shifting, lying, Darvo, deny, accuse, reverse victim and offender, flipping the script, or in his case here, oh, I have a medical condition where I can't lie. Clearly, though, there's going to be other pictures you see where he's absolutely sweating. But Virginia had said, oh, Prince Andrew was sweating when we were dancing. And Prince Andrew's like, no, that couldn't have been me. I don't sweat. I have a medical condition that I don't sweat. It's like, actually, dude, you're just allergic to accountability. That's all.
There's another monster whopper from the former Prince Andrew, because, of course, he claims, oh, I couldn't have been there because she describes me as sweating, and it's impossible for me to sweat. But, of course, some photos emerged where Prince Andrew appears to be sweating like...
Look at Prince Andrew all sweating and things there. Can you believe it? Can you believe a guy like Prince Andrew would lie? Are you kidding? I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
Like a pig. But of course, all of this is the lead up to the bigger denial, right? It's not about whether he sweats or not. It's about his word versus Virginia Giuffre. It never happened. And I want to say Virginia Roberts was her maiden name. Giuffre was her later name. That's why they referred to her as Roberts there. But what's so interesting about what the Epstein files have revealed, remember that we were told it's a big nothing burger. Nothing's going to come out of this. But nearly all of Prince Andrew's lies in this interview have been discovered now that we have contemporaneous communication, such as this communication between Jeffrey Epstein and a guy named Thomas Landon. Now, Landon formerly worked for the New York Times until 2019. Thomas Landon says here, I think the big issue is separating yourself from Andrew. I mean, in the end, he had consensual sex with Virginia Roberts, and Virginia Roberts worked for you. The rest is atmospherics. Now, this is a huge allegation because Thomas Landon is basically admitting, yeah, of course, Virginia Roberts had sex with Prince Andrew. And of course, she worked for you. So this is a tacit admission back in 2015, I mean, way early on, that the substance of the story of them actually having sex is true. But the prince basically says it never happened at all. And so I don't really know how credible that is. He's basically lied through his teeth this entire time about his ability to sweat, meeting her at all. There's a photo of it. And then, of course, having sex Internally, they're like, yeah, of course that happened. And that's just the Virginia Giuffre part. That's to say nothing of the lies about cutting off Epstein in 2010 when it appears that the exact.
And that's something you're going to see other politicians do as well. They're going to lie about when they cut off Epstein. And then some of the emails are proving actually all these other guys, they were seeing him after they said they cut him off. And the reason is a thing is because of what Epstein was convicted of before. He was convicted of SA. So people were saying, oh, we cut him off at that point. But there's plenty of people that after that even did not cut him off at all and were still friends with him.
The opposite happened, and that he was passing along key information from his role as this trade envoy. I should also mention that this has been a closely examined story for a long time. Andrew Lowney released a book exploring his friendship with Epstein and his relationships, alleging a lot of damaging things related to Andrew's personal life. The book alleges that while staying in Thailand, more than 40 women were brought to his hotel room. Hotel staff were used to foreigners bringing in girls, but amazed that more than.
Also to note, one of our community members here of the Flock of Black Sheep, Danielle, had surgery today, but it went very well. So everyone should wish her well. The good vibes and thoughts and prayers and energy, it went good. So wanted to announce that for people too.
10 a day were going to Andrew's room, Lowney writes. The book also alleges that compromising material on Andrew may have been passed to Israel's Mossad Secret Service. So it isn't as if this is Andrew's first time getting in trouble, but the Epstein files have confirmed a lot of what has been whispered about or suspected for a long time about his improper handling of his relationship with Epstein, of his position in the 2010s. We also discovered in the files the DOJ actually approached Prince Andrew about information regarding someone named Peter Nygaard, who was, quote, believed to have trafficked minor and adult victims. According to the UK Telegraph, the Duke is understood to have stayed at Mr. Nygaard's mansion with his ex-wife in June 2000. Later, that same guy was convicted on assaults of 4 women, ranging in age from 16 to 28 at the time of offenses. So Andrew has been embroiled in controversy for a while. This may just be the first thing that he's actually stuck with, is this charge of inappropriate leaking of confidential information. I don't know. I am pleased, I guess, on the one hand, to see that something has come from all of this. But sadly, it's just kind of this, I don't want to say lesser charge, but it really does feel like with everything that has been alleged.
It is a bit of a lesser charge. Like, again, I think it reminds me of what Al Capone was convicted of. Al Capone was convicted of tax evasion, not the more serious crimes. And that's kind of what's going on here with former Prince Andrew as well.
Against Prince Andrew, this is probably the lowest thing he could be in trouble for. But then again, on the bright side, based on photos that came from Reuters after Prince Andrew's arrest, it does look like he's learning to sweat again.
Huh.
I'm going to jump into things.
Nope. We got under this person.
Prince Andrew has been
Heather Cox Richardson.
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has officially been arrested. Now, this is on suspicion of.
Now, this is Law and Crime Network. That person we just watched is CoffeeZilla, but that was on his Voidzilla channel. Definitely check that out if you're into people calling out con artists and grifters. He's great at that. Now, this is Law and Crime Network. We usually listen to Chris Stewart on this channel, but this is Jesse Weber. He's been going over more of the Epstein stuff.
Misconduct in public office. He has been in the Epstein files. He's been part of the Epstein conversation for quite some time. This is a major, major development and escalation. But what he was arrested for and whether or not they could successfully prosecute him, that's what we got to talk about. We're going to break it down right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So for weeks now, we've been going through all of the Epstein files, right? The document releases, page after page of emails, internal reports, archive communications, and the question sitting underneath all of it has been very simple. Is any of this actually going to lead to anything? I mean, we just did an episode on the fallout for the high-profile politicians, the business.
And again, there's been no arrests in America. This is an arrest from England, right? But where are the arrests in America? And part of the problem with this whole thing is, one, we're not getting all of it still. There's still been redactions. There's still been things that we don't know. And also, they're just spilling out these names. And here's the thing about that, though. Like, there's people mentioned in these that aren't really directly involved. For example, Janis Joplin's in the list. Janis Joplin's never met Jeffrey Epstein. Why is she in the list? I think it's only serving to deflect and obfuscate from the points here being made. There's other people that have passed away that are in the list. So they're kind of make it seem like, oh, this person's guilty too, when they really need to narrow the focus to see who is truly guilty. That's what needs to happen, but that's not what Pam Bondi wants to happen. And there's many other people that don't want it to happen either. I mean, when Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton testify, I don't think that's happened yet, but that's going to be big, big news to see what they say. Because Bill Clinton might say, F it. He might say, you know what? I'm however old I am. He's got to be around 80, right? 70s, 80. He's like, screw it. I'm going to do what I do. And who knows what he'll say? I don't know.
Business leaders, we've been seeing that. And then what just happened? If you've been watching the news today, you have heard that the Thames Valley Police arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly known as Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, on suspicion of misconduct in public office. This carries potentially life in prison. It happened reportedly just after 8 a.m. local time.
Misconduct in public office. Well, at least it can be life in prison, but somehow I doubt that would happen.
6 unmarked police vehicles show up at Andrew's place. Oh, and he was taken into custody on his 66th birthday. Now, he remains in custody at the time of this recording. At this point, it doesn't appear he's officially been indicted, so just arrested on suspicion of this charge. But I will tell you, if the charges follow, okay, this would mark, it's already been marked, a historic moment. You have a senior member of the British royal family arrested in connection with actions tied to official government duties. Now, the Thames Valley Police issued a statement early on that read, as part of the investigation, we have today arrested a man in his 60s from Norfolk on suspicion of misconduct in public office and are carrying out searches at addresses in Berkshire and Norfolk. The man remains in police custody at this time. Now, that's standard for authorities over there to not identify the person that they arrested. But King Charles III, so we're talking about Andrew's brother, later released a statement, okay? And this is what it said. I have learned with the deepest concern the news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and suspicion of misconduct in public office. What now follows is the full, fair, and proper process by which this issue is investigated in the appropriate manner and by the appropriate authorities. In this, as I have said before, they have our full and wholehearted support and cooperation. Let me state clearly, the law must take its course. As this process continues, it would not be right for me to comment further on this matter. My family and I will continue in our duty and service to you all. So basically, in my view, that's the king saying, Andrew, you're on your own. We cannot even have the appearance of being involved in this. We cannot have even the appearance that we're affecting this investigation or tainting this investigation or getting involved in this investigation. And I would say this is not surprising considering what? Andrew's already been stripped of his royal titles. He was already ostracized by the family by all accounts. And I want to back up on that for a second, because if you're just hearing this now, you might be probably thinking, wait a second. Andrew was arrested. Is this about Jeffrey Epstein? Is this about allegations of sex crimes? No, this is about Epstein. There is an arrest, but it's not in the way that you think, okay? So it starts off, just to give you some background, Jeffrey Epstein. In the late 1990s, early 2000s, Epstein, as we know, cultivated relationships with politicians, billionaires, celebrities, and royalty. One of those relationships was with Andrew, formerly Prince Andrew.
There he is, former Prince Andrew, a young Prince Andrew. And is that Fergie there? I'm not as familiar with my English royalty. But also, while you're here, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I've been talking a lot about the Nancy Guthrie case, but today I decided to take a little bit of a break from that and go over this instead. So it's a little bit Epstein, a little bit Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew to be exact.
second son of Queen Elizabeth II. They were photographed together. Andrew stayed at Epstein's homes, apparently. They moved in overlapping circles through Epstein's then girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, or associate Ghislaine Maxwell. And for years, it was framed as very controversial and as bad judgment. Embarrassing, maybe not criminal. Then in 2015, Virginia Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit alleging that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell trafficked her and that she was forced to have sex with Andrew, including when she was just 17 years old. Now, Andrew denied the allegations, denied meeting her, questioned the authenticity of a photo showing them or seemingly showing them together. In 2019, he attempted to repair the PR damage with that now infamous BBC Newsnight interview. You know, the pizza alibi, the claim that he couldn't sweat. It collapsed almost
What a horrible interview that was for him.
immediately. And within days, Queen Elizabeth removed him from public duties. In 2022, he settled Giuffre's civil lawsuit for an undisclosed amount, admitted no liability. And after that, it seemed like the story might be over. Andrew kind of retreated from public life. But here's the thing. The Epstein story didn't die. Andrew was actually stripped of his royal titles. And then in January of 2026, the U.S. Department of Justice released another massive dump of Epstein files. And buried in those documents was something that shifted the focus entirely. This brings us to what we're talking about today. It was about Andrew's official government role. Between 2001 and 2011, Andrew served as the United Kingdom's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment. This is a formal government position. It's a trade envoy.
Oh, look at them. Prince Andrew with William Clinton.
Crown servant. And in the release communications, the emails, it seems that investigators found messages suggesting that Andrew allegedly shared official trip reports and what appeared to be a confidential investment brief, so sensitive information, with Jeffrey Epstein, and that this was in 2010. So this was 2 years after Epstein's 2008 conviction in Florida. Remember, solicitation of prostitution, remember, of a minor too? And that detail matters because in 2010, Andrew wasn't just a royal family member. He was serving in an official government capacity. And under UK law, Crown servants are bound by duties relating to the handling of sensitive government information. The Official Secrets Act of 1989, which is the relevant version here, specifically protects information relating to international relations. That's the key.
Well, so I'll give you one opportunity to share what you think is being false here. And if you don't do it, you will be banned.
That
accusations without evidence will not be tolerated here.
Seems to be what investigators are now examining. All right, so by the way, we're still kind of in the beginning stages of 2026, but I will tell you, if you got debt, the threat to your financial health, that stays the same. Debt is a silent killer. Interest compounds, fees stack up, your financial problems multiply. It doesn't need to stay that way. Our sponsor, PDS Debt, has helped hundreds of thousands escape debt, reduce what they owe, and take back control. So whether it's credit cards, personal loans, medical bills, PDS Debt has customized options to help. It's been reported that Andrew has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. That is a separate common law offense, carries its own legal threshold. The Crown Prosecution Service, so the main prosecutorial arm out in the UK, defines it this way. A public officer acting as such commits the offense if they willfully neglect their duty or willfully misconduct themselves to such a degree as to amount to an abuse of the public's trust in the office holder without reasonable excuse or justification. And the Court of Appeal has described the threshold as a high one, that you're talking about conduct that is, quote, so far below acceptable standards as to amount to an abuse of the public's trust. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more about what that means. But in Andrew's case, the alleged misconduct is the sharing of sensitive government information with a private citizen, Jeffrey Epstein, who should not have received this, right? That seems to be what the main argument would be. And I want to walk you through how we got to this arrest, because after the January 2026 document dump, there were emails that surfaced from 2010. So again, 2 years after Epstein's conviction. And they showed what appeared to be ongoing communication between Epstein and someone identified in the files as the Duke. Now, the Duke, presumably Andrew, the Duke of York. And here's what those emails purportedly contain. November 30th, 2010, Andrew's special advisor, Amit Patel, sends him an email, and it reads, "Sir, please find attached the visit reports for Vietnam, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Shenzhen in relation to your recent visit to Southeast Asia." And attached are official documents, government records generated seemingly during Andrew's work as the UK's trade envoy. According to the files, Andrew appears to have forwarded those reports, the email, their contents, to Jeffrey Epstein. And there's no forwarding message, no context given. There's another email from December 24th, 2010, so Christmas Eve. Andrew appears to write to Epstein and includes what he describes as a confidential brief on investment opportunities in Afghanistan's Helmand province. And here's what the email says. So first of all, it says to J, and then it ends from A. Attached is a confidential brief produced by the Provincial Reconstruction Team in Helmand Province for international investment opportunities. These are not exclusive to Helmand Province, but principally focused on that province. I'm going to offer this elsewhere in my network, including Abu Dhabi, but would be very interested in your comments, views, or ideas as to whom I could also usefully show this to attract some interest.
Almost sounds like some insider trading here.
I have sadly already found out that Gates Foundation doesn't do anything in Afghanistan. So at this time, Helmand Province in 2010, this is our understanding, this was at the height of the war in Afghanistan, and there were British troops that were on the ground there. And Andrew is allegedly sending information about this to Jeffrey Epstein. So it kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about. You have a former prince, the king's brother, arrested on his birthday, police searching royal properties too.
And you have to think here, take a step back. Why would former Prince Andrew want to help out Jeffrey Epstein so much like this? Oh, hey, Jeffrey, out of the kindness of my heart, let's get some investment opportunities in this province in Afghanistan. Is that what it is? Or is it more than likely Jeffrey Epstein blackmailed former Prince Andrew and he has some dirt on him? And he said, Prince Andrew, you better do this, this, or this, or I'm going to rip you a new one. That's probably what it was.
By the way, we'll talk about that. And a criminal investigation into whether sensitive government information was improperly shared with, a convicted sex offender. Now, the late Virginia Giuffre, her family released a statement today. And you'll remember, I mentioned this, Giuffre was the woman who alleged that Epstein trafficked her to Andrew. And by the way, her posthumous memoir kept this story alive. Her family said, at last, today our broken hearts have been lifted at the news that no one is above the law, not even royalty. He was never a prince. For survivors everywhere, Virginia did this for you. I want to talk about this. Okay, let me bring in my friend Richard Schoenstein, litigator, trial attorney. Okay, your reaction to what? The first?
This is a good one here, right? Let's see what he says. I think Prince Andrew is being blackmailed, but it's his own fault. It was his own fault. He was probably being blackmailed, right?
Senior royal to ever be arrested? This is a big development in the Epstein saga. So first, your reaction to this news.
So my reaction to the news is, really? This guy's been under suspicion of sex trafficking and sexual abuse for years and years and years. But the thing that's made the British government angry is he maybe gave away some money secrets. And that's what they're going to prosecute him for.
The argument would be,
And that's silly though, right? Of all the things that he's been accused of, money secrets is what they're going to get him on. I mean, if you're trying to make it seem like these governments are not corrupt, you're going to get them on just the financial aspect of it all. That's absurd. I mean, that's absurd and a slap in the face. Perhaps better than nothing, but still a slap in the face.
Isn't this probably the more straightforward path to prosecution than sex-related crimes if you just look at the emails?
It is probably more straightforward, and there may be a higher degree of proof. I give you that. But, no one is facing consequences for what went on that island. And so now this guy's going to be prosecuted because he sent an email with some trade secrets?
Well, I want to get into that. But I guess the question is, in the overall scheme, and look, you're right, he hasn't been officially charged with respect to any sex-related crimes. I hear you. But in the idea of releasing the Epstein files, transparency, accountability. Talked earlier about the statement from Virginia Giuffre's family. There are those who say, okay, this is a measure of some sort of accountability for someone having a connection to Jeffrey Epstein. And again, look, he hasn't been officially indicted, at least at the time of this recording. He hasn't been officially charged or found guilty. But obviously people are looking at this, and I did a full episode about what's accountability, people resigning, information coming out, ridicule, investigations. This is something. This is something against the former prince. I mean, it wasn't just that he was stripped of his titles and was essentially banished. Now there's an investigation.
Yeah, well, it's something. It's potentially something. And I think that
So someone's asking in the chat, why aren't the people that are covering this up getting in trouble? And I would say it's most likely because they're involved and they're also pulling the levers of power. So who's going to hold them accountable? You're only seeing some people in America even try. Thomas Massey, Ro Khanna, Marjorie Taylor Greene, even when she was a congressperson. She's no longer one. But every step of the way, they just seem to be getting so much pushback in America. It makes it tough. But thank goodness for Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna at the least.
Being stripped of his title and his royal duties was somewhat significant, and probably a more significant step than anything we've seen in the United States, where we refuse to release the full files. We refuse to do anything about it. We just ignore it or downplay it. So there's something being done. And if it makes some of the survivors or their families, if it alleviates some of what they've had to suffer over the years, then I'm happy for it. I just think it's a little off target.
I mean, he could be looking at life in prison. I'm not sure that's exactly what would happen, but there is a possibility.
Well, that's the other thing, Jesse. We have to see how it plays out. I mean,
that's the only saving grace, that the penalty is up to life in prison. You wouldn't have thought so, but hey, if they get him for life in prison because of a financial crime, okay. I mean, it's not the right crime they're getting him for necessarily, but at least he's getting punished in some way.
Right.
Bringing, as you know, I mean, you follow more of these cases than anybody, bringing charges and getting a conviction and putting someone in jail, those 2 points are far removed, and we have to see what happens with this process going forward. It was interesting. It was a surprise.
It's a surprise. Well, here's the thing. We did an episode on Epstein's connection to the royals. We knew there was some sort of investigation. I was not expecting a full-blown arrest and now potential charges. I did look up what the Crown Prosecution Service says about misconduct in public office. And the Crown Prosecution Service is the main prosecuting arm in Britain. So to be clear, we're talking about arrest under suspicion. There hasn't been a formal charge yet. We'll see if that actually develops. They have to gather and assess evidence, which let's talk about what they might be searching at the properties. But first, if you talk about a charge, it is a public officer. So here I think they'd be able to say that, right? He was acting as an official government envoy. This public officer willfully neglects to perform their duty and or willfully misconducts themselves, that this amounts to an abuse of public trust, and there is no reasonable excuse or justification. Now, what is some of the evidence that may be used here? Well, there's an alleged email where Andrew allegedly shares files that are marked as confidential brief with Epstein on potential investments in southern Afghanistan. By the way, British forces were based there. Now, Andrew allegedly said at the time that, look, I was just seeing comments or views or ideas that maybe Epstein might have had to it.
Dude, what are you talking about? That's exactly what we've been saying. So why are you accusing of something that we've been saying? Like, what is your problem?
Tracked interest. I think that's what it was reported. There's also this allegation that Andrew forwarded his official reports on his visits to Asia that was sent to him by his special.
What he should be getting in trouble for is just not what he is getting arrested for right now. That's just a fact. That's not false information. It's a fact that that's what he's getting arrested for. We're not saying he should be getting arrested for that, but it's a fact that is what he's getting arrested for. Jesus.
Special advisor to Epstein just minutes after he got them. No forwarding message, no context. So when we go back to what the law, I looked this up. It says that this public officer had to have been acting as such. So it needs to be distinguished from some.
I gave him a chance, but now he's banned, because you can't accuse me of saying false information about something like this when I'm just reporting what's going on in the case. That's ridiculous.
Somebody who is merely acting while a public officer, but more acting as a public officer. So in that context is where they allegedly engaged in misconduct. There has to be a nexus between the willful neglect, the breach of duty, the willful misconduct, and that power, that authority, those responsibilities. What does willful mean? According to the Crown Prosecution Service, willful means deliberately doing something which is wrong, knowing it to be wrong, or with reckless indifference as to whether it is wrong or not, that this person was aware of the duty and knew that the way in which they carried out or neglected that duty was capable of reaching the seriousness threshold that amounts to misconduct. So you don't have to prove that the defendant themselves came to that view. All you have to show is that they had the means available to them to make such an assessment, or that the defendant was reckless. And in order to establish this is a serious issue, the seriousness of the effect, it's whether the conduct amounted to a serious abuse of the public's trust, and that not every willful neglect of duty or misconduct is going to reach that bar. It is a high bar of seriousness, but you have to basically say, and this is, I'm reading a quote, an affront to the standing of the public office held. The threshold is a high one requiring conduct so far below acceptable standards as to amount to an abuse of the public's trust in the office holder. And this is going to be determined by a jury. So, Rich, I threw a lot at you. I guess the question is, what are some things you're going to be looking out for to determine, is this a serious breach of trust, misconduct in public office based on what we're seeing right now?
Well, that was a great summary and good research of what it would require to prove these charges. So I think this is an interesting case because to me, willfulness seems kind of obvious. If he was giving away information that he had no right to give away to Jeffrey Epstein, that seems fundamentally willful. But the big question here that the courts will have to ponder before it even gets to a jury is, was this really in furtherance of his official duties? And I don't know enough about what his official duties were at the time as a prince and whatever other offices he held to know if passing on this information could have arguably been part of the duty. He's going to say, I think, this really had nothing to do with my official duties. I was providing some information to a friend on his request that I had access to. I wasn't trying to negotiate with Epstein on behalf of the United Kingdom. I wasn't trying to transact business. I wasn't representing the crown. I was just passing on some data the guy asked for. I did not have any ill intent, etc. And even though a jury might conclude you had no business passing on that confidential governmental information to this maniac.
Confidential government information to Jeffrey Epstein. It's pretty ridiculous, right? But it goes to show you that he was probably there was dirt on him more than likely. And that's what Jeffrey Epstein trafficked in. Not only did he traffic in humans, he trafficked in blackmailing powerful people. People like Lex Wessner. It's one of the reasons why he has so much money. Jeffrey Epstein, more than likely. And there's another big person whose name I forget. Because no one knew where Jeffrey Epstein got his money from. Where did he get it from? Well, it turns out people like Lex Wessner and this one other person were giving him a fortune for financial advice. But why would they be giving Jeffrey Epstein money for financial advice when they were the ones that were the financial experts, not Jeffrey Epstein? Goes to show you there's probably some blackmail going on in there, and Jeffrey Epstein just had him by the balls.
Was it part of his official duty? I think that to me is the toughest part of the case.
So I think that's the easiest part. I think he's in a position where he gets this information. He's handing it over, or allegedly handing it over. I guess the question is, what was he gaining out of this? Like, whether even it rises to the seriousness or whether it rises to the level of what he would be punished. I looked up the Crown Prosecution Service. They said some of the things to factor in is, did the conduct involve the exploitation or attempted exploitation of vulnerable people? Did the conduct have an operational impact?
His name is Lex Wexner. Make sure I pronounce it correctly. I'm going to find the other guy, too, that gave Epstein most of his money.
That harmed the public interest or undermined public trust either in the role held by the suspect or the relevant public service or institution. What was the suspect's motive? Was it personal gain? What was the severity of the actual or likely consequences? Was there a risk of death or serious injury? How egregious was the abuse of power? Did the willful misconduct or breach of a duty have the effect of benefiting the wider public interest rather than being injurious to it? So I guess if you look at a textbook example, if he gave up like the location of British forces and he did it for money and they got killed, that's like textbook, throw the book at him, right? This one, I'm curious, like, what did he have to gain by it? Who was harmed by it? I think those are the things that I'm looking out for.
Leon Black. That's the other one. So Leon Black and Les Wexner, they were the two people that gave him the most amount of money.
So, right. So this is a financial crime, right? Because it's trade information. It's information about transactions on behalf of the United Kingdom. Is that the way you understand it? That's the way I understand it.
That's the way I understand it. I mean,
Right.
if you're in a
Okay.
position where you're getting this material and you're sharing it, and you could say, just in and of itself, that's breaching his responsibilities, his duties. This is confidential information or sensitive information. That I think is a level. I just don't know.
It's like
goes
an
past that.
insider. It's like an insider trading case.
little
Who
bit,
are you
yeah.
harming when you give away secrets of a company so that someone can make decisions about buying and selling stock with more information than others? You're harming the other stockholders, or in this case, you're potentially harming the United Kingdom itself because you're providing somebody with secret information that they can enact trades on. Now, a question I would have on either side of this case is, did Jeffrey Epstein use this information? What did he do with it? Did he pass it on? Did he trade on it? If he traded on it and made some financial gain, then that's to the financial detriment of somebody else, potentially of the United Kingdom or of others who were involved in the trading. So there could be, or the public. So there very well could be victims, just as there are in insider trading and other kinds of financial fraud cases.
I guess the other thing is whether or not he had authorization to share this allegedly sensitive government material. And I wonder if you'd say, look, there was nothing so confidential about it and I couldn't share it, or maybe it was public knowledge or was about to be.
Right.
That might be tough, but I think that does go into whether or not this is a deliberate breach of official duty.
Yeah, in a case involving disclosure of confidential information, you're always going to look at, is that information truly confidential? Does it exist somewhere else in the public forum? Was it obtainable by Jeffrey Epstein from somebody else? Or was it stale at the time it was released? What measures did the government take to protect the confidentiality of that information? That goes to both whether it was confidential and the level of Andrew's misconduct in Fenny. If he didn't know it was a secret, I mean, I don't know how he would know, but if he
Especially
didn't
if it's
know
labeled confidential or something like that. Yeah.
Well, right. You always look, where is the information kept? How is it marked? How is it stored? You always look at stuff like this. So it's an interesting case. I mean, I was a little hard on it on the outset because I think there are more important issues here arising from these Epstein files. But the case itself is interesting from the perspective of just a business fraud case and how you would prosecute something like that.
What I'm about to say, I want to be clear. I am not making this comparison on its face, but I guarantee you, as this comes up today, you are going to hear the term Al Capone.
I thought of the same thing. You're
It's
absolutely going to hear
Al Capone.
that.
I mean, seriously.
I actually did not watch this first, but it's interesting they're making the same connections I was.
It's like you couldn't get him on the other stuff. It was tax-related crimes, right? So again, I'm sure you're going to hear that today. Not making the comparison that Prince Andrew is anywhere in the realm of Al Capone, but whatever. Anyway, look, there are two addresses that were reportedly searched by authorities. You have one in Berkshire, one in Norfolk. He had lived in Windsor Royal Lodge in Berkshire earlier this month. Now he has this new home in Sandringham, this estate in Norfolk. Two parts to this. What do you think they're looking for in connection with this alleged crime? And B, I don't know the whole rules of UK law, but assuming it's similar to what we have here in the United States, what happens if they find something else during the course of their search that's not related to the current breach, the alleged breach of trust?
You asked the best question. So I'll take the easier one. The first question is easier. What they're looking for is anything with a plug or anything that can plug into something, right? Any computer, any tablet, any phone, any external media, any device that might have data on it or might have evidence of things that were sent to or received from Jeffrey Epstein or anybody else, or might show where he kept this kind of data, or if he was harvesting it and maintaining it in some form. So they're looking for all of that. I mean, I doubt they're looking for physical printouts of confidential information. That doesn't seem very likely. But usually these days, when you bust into a home in a case like this, you're going to carry out every computer you can find and hand it over to people who know how to search them. Your second question is much harder. What happens if they carry out a computer and they find,
10
10 metric tons of pornography. I don't know the answer to that. That doesn't seem to fit the crime and the elements that you outlined, which is probably part of the British government's answer to why are you prosecuting this potentially, but you didn't prosecute the other stuff. That's because this particular crime, if it was committed, is actually a crime if it's carried out by a public official. And that's why they feel they can go after it, plus the evidence. So if other stuff comes out, I don't know. I mean, I think we know everything we need to know about Andrew already in that regard, but we'll see.
It gets complicated because here in the United States, when you have a search warrant that is very specific for what you're looking for, but you discover evidence of other criminality, it's not like it can just be ignored. So I'm curious. I don't know what else they might find, but something I had to address. Okay, by the way.
If you go in with a search warrant, and you find like bodies in the house,
I mean,
you
it's
can
not
prosecute that.
Yeah, it's not like you're like, well, it wasn't in the search warrant.
And I did hear they were investigating bodies on the Epstein Island there, or they were searching for them. I did hear that. I don't know what they came up with, though.
We're just going to ignore it. Let me ask you this. You saw the statement from the king, okay? Basically, it's like, Andrew, you're on your own, right?
Yeah, and I think people are going to think about this king and the way he's handled relations now with one of his sons and one of his brothers, and that's going to be part of his legacy. But I actually thought this particular statement by the king was appropriate. He should stay out of it. Government officials should stay out of it. I've been critical in the United States about government officials piping up too much during prosecution. So I think the king saying this is going to be carried out like any other criminal matter, and I'm not going to say anything more about it, and my family is going to go about doing our royal duties, I actually think that's probably exactly right.
Before I let you go, this is the big part. Is this going to spark the United States Department of Justice or any, U.S. attorney?
The million-dollar question, is this going to spark the United States Department of Justice to do something, to make some arrests? Let's see.
Attorney's office to do something, right? Because people will say, look at the UK. They're going after the highest of the high. How come we're not seeing an investigation or criminal charges against anybody here in the United States? Now, on one hand, I've talked about this before, based on case summaries and internal memos in the Epstein files, they have said there was no videos or photographs of other people abusing young girls other than Epstein and Maxwell. But could there be an investigation into something else that's not related to sex crimes? And the problem I see is I wonder if this will spark the DOJ basically on public pressure to do something more. I don't know if there's anything more. But also, we can't forget that it was last summer when the DOJ and the FBI released a memo saying, quote, we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So essentially, they'd have to go back on that statement unless they say, hey, that was with respect to sex crimes. There might be something else to look at here. I don't know. Got to ask you.
Yeah, I think that the fact that this is happening in the UK, well, first of all, he's not a public official anymore. He's an ex-former official.
And that's probably a big reason why he was arrested too, because he's not a current official, right?
So this would be, to me, more like if they went ahead and prosecuted Bill Clinton. He's an ex-president. He's not in power. I mean, he holds some influence, but he's not in power. And so that would be the analogy to me,
right,
not going after people who are currently in power. I think there's very little chance that DOJ, which is the legal department now of the people in power, would go after the people in power.
Right.
That's just not the way it's set up. That's not what DOJ has become. I don't see any way that changes unless down the road there's a change in who's in charge of DOJ. The only way to change what DOJ does is to change who's in charge. And people will have a chance to do that at the ballot box in some manner this year, and then they'll have another chance in a couple of years. And that's the only thing. I don't think what happens in England is going to, it'll be the subject for a lot of discussion like the one we're having, but it's not going to amount to a change in the way business is done here.
And that's unfortunate, right? It should, though. We should take a page out of their book with this, I would say.
Rich Schoenstein, thanks so much for coming on and jumping on so quickly to do this breaking news. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. We'll keep an eye on this one, huh?
Absolutely. And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify.
All right. So next, should we watch Dr. Grande? Press 1 for Dr. Grande, 2 for Megyn Kelly, 3 for Hassan, 4 for Ben Shapiro. Do you remember that? So 1 Dr. Grande, 2 Megyn Kelly, 3 Hassan, 4 Ben Shapiro. So as you've noticed, I'm trying to get a mixture of all of the different angles out there. Don't want to be biased here, you know. Wizards are not biased. Who did I say was number 1? Dr. Grande? Okay, we can do Dr. Grande first.
But it is not. Oh, this is Dr. Grande. Today, I will analyze the case of the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was born on February 19, 1960, in London, England. He is the second son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Andrew's older brother is King Charles III. In 1986, Andrew married Sarah Ferguson. The couple went on to have 2 daughters before divorcing in 1996. In 2001, Andrew started serving as a UK trade envoy, a position he kept for 10 years. In 2003, he moved into a 30-room mansion in Windsor Great Park called the Royal Lodge. As a senior member of the royal family, Andrew knew a lot of people, but one friend in particular, disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, would prove to be a major headache. In 2006, Jeffrey was accused of offenses related to sex. Many powerful and wealthy people tried to distance themselves from Jeffrey after this, but Andrew struggled to accomplish this objective. He claimed that he stopped having contact with Jeffrey in 2006, but in December 2010, Andrew traveled to New York City to visit with him. The men were photographed walking together in Central Park. By this point, Jeffrey was a convicted criminal. To explain why he was with Jeffrey, Andrew said that he met him to tell him they could not be seen together. So, to avoid being spotted with Jeffrey, Andrew walked next to him in a busy public park.
The Dr. Grande dry humor. I can't afford to be seen with Jeffrey, but I have to tell him in person something.
The low level of critical thinking skills evident in this decision is pretty much par for the course for Andrew. In 2014, a court filing in Florida accused Andrew of having sex with a woman named Virginia Giuffre in 2001, when she was 17 years old and known as Virginia Roberts. Virginia claimed that Jeffrey forced her to participate in sexual activity with Andrew in London, in New York, and in the U.S. Virgin Islands. To support her claim, she shared a now notorious photograph of her with Andrew and Jeffrey's assistant and conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell. The claim was also supported by flight logs that placed Virginia and Andrew together in those 3 locations. By 2019, Andrew was really feeling the pressure from his prior relationship with Jeffrey and from Virginia's accusations. He decided to give an interview to the BBC in November of that year, but this only made his situation much worse. Andrew minimized his relationship with Jeffrey and said he did not remember meeting Virginia or posing for that photograph. The statement that Andrew made during the interview that attracted the most attention, however, was his defense against Virginia's claim that he was sweating profusely when they met in London. Andrew indicated that during his service in the Falklands War, an adrenaline overdose led to a condition that made it impossible for him to sweat. There is no scientific reason to believe this happened. The fallout from the disastrous interview was nothing short of catastrophic. Andrew went on to find himself in even more trouble. In August 2021, Virginia filed a lawsuit against him claiming that he caused her emotional distress. The lawsuit settled less than a year later, although the amount that changed hands was never disclosed. In January 2022, Andrew was forced to give up his royal charities.
That's good that he was. But by the way, please remember to like the video if you're here. Likes are free. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Super chats are a great way to get questions answered and support the channel. And super stickers and memberships are a great way to support the channel too. Every night I go live and talk about current events or true crime. This kind of is a combination of both here. And there's a great flock of black sheep in the comments in the live chat here too. But I use my experience with mental health and addiction and narcissistic abuse to give my unique perspective on true crime and current events.
Military titles, and he was no longer permitted to use His Royal Highness. In April 2025, Virginia died, which led to her memoir being released 6 months later. It did not contain any new allegations against Andrew, but it did contain more details. This led to increased outrage against Andrew. The monarchy removed the style, titles, and honors of Prince Andrew, which meant that his name was simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Prince Andrew was no more. The disgraced royal was kicked out of the Royal Lodge and forced to move to Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate, which is personally owned by King Charles III. Andrew probably thought that his humiliation was now complete. He was no longer a prince. He lost many other titles and honors. He had to move out of his mansion, and the public was generally against him. His situation could not get any worse. His level of disgrace was now at maximum. One thing was for certain, there would be no other incident. Now moving to the timeline of the
Reminds me of the joke. I know one thing for sure and two things for certain.
incident. On January 30, 2026, under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a large quantity of files related to the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein were released to the public. This involved about 3 to 3.5 million documents. Many well-known figures were mentioned in these documents, including Andrew, the man formerly known as Prince. There were emails between Andrew and Jeffrey indicating they had stayed in contact for years. Some of the exchanges featured Jeffrey proposing the idea of introducing Andrew to women. Andrew appeared to be receptive to this idea. For example, in August 2010, Jeffrey sent an email indicating that Andrew might enjoy having dinner with a 26-year-old Russian woman who already had Andrew's email address. In response, Andrew said he would be delighted to meet her. There were photographs in the file release that appeared to show Andrew in informal and compromising positions with women in social settings. As I mentioned, Andrew served as a UK trade envoy from 2001 to 2011. Emails from 2010 and 2011, toward the end of his service, indicate that Andrew may have shared UK government trade envoy reports with Jeffrey. These reports included details about investment opportunities in places like Singapore, Hong Kong, and Vietnam. For example, on November 30, 2010, when Andrew was in Asia, he forwarded official reports sent to him by his special advisor to Jeffrey just minutes after he received them. During the next month, Andrew shared a confidential brief on potential investment opportunities in Afghanistan. Andrew found himself as a key figure in the released Epstein files, appearing in over 170 documents. He is one of the most frequently referenced British figures in the release. On Thursday, February 19, 2026, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Many people thought this was a great way for Andrew to celebrate his 66th birthday. The police conducted searches at multiple addresses, including Andrew's current home at Wood Farm and his former home at Royal Lodge. The investigation centered on Andrew allegedly sharing those trade envoy reports with Jeffrey. King Charles III quickly reacted to the news of his brother's arrest.
So again, if literally everyone's saying he's arrested, so I don't know what Grok is talking about.
Releasing a statement indicating the monarchy will fully cooperate with law enforcement, and he emphasized that no one is above the law. It does not appear as though Andrew will get any help from the monarchy, which is not surprising considering the prior loss of his titles. If Andrew is charged with misconduct in public office and ultimately convicted, he will face a maximum possible sentence of life in prison. Realistically, I would be very surprised if he received more than 3 years in prison, especially if he did not benefit financially from the disclosures.
More than likely, I agree with Dr. Grande there. If he gets anything more than 3 years, I would be surprised. But also, I've got a fever, and it can only be cured by more likes, and likes are free.
Prior to this incident, Andrew had experienced humiliations that were exceptionally rare for royalty. With his arrest, he has achieved yet another distinction in this area. This is the first arrest of a senior member of the British royal family since 1647, when Charles I was arrested for treason. Andrew is probably not happy about a potential prison sentence, but it is not all bad news. At least he doesn't face the same penalty as Charles I received in 1649. He was beheaded. At the time I'm making this video, Andrew has been released from police custody.
This is going to be a meme, this picture here. Just caption this. So chat, caption this image here. What is he thinking? What is he feeling? How would they use this in a meme in conversation? When this, when that.
After being interviewed for 12 hours. The Crown Prosecution Service has not yet decided whether to bring charges, and the investigation continues. Now moving to my analysis. In the last video I released about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, I talked about how the public was frustrated that he never faced definitive consequences for his alleged actions. That changed when he lost the title Prince and was kicked out of the Royal Lodge. There was finally a measure of justice. If it weren't for the release of the Epstein files, Andrew's banishment from the royal family would have been his greatest punishment. Now, with the files being public, he may move toward consequences of even more significance. Every time Andrew believed he had paid the price, another bill arrived in the mail. There are still two reasons for Andrew to remain positive. One, he has not been charged. Maybe he will never be charged. And two, historically, the Crown Prosecution Service has struggled to convict people for the offense of misconduct in public office. This is especially true in high-profile or politically sensitive cases.
Somehow I'm not surprised that they've struggled to convict in these kinds of scenarios. So if he walks completely, would that surprise me at all? Absolutely not.
The legal definition for this offense is vague, which gives the defense a lot of opportunities. Andrew will almost certainly have the best attorneys that money can buy. He will not make it easy on the Crown. In the unlikely event that Andrew is charged, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison, or even any time in prison, his disgrace will finally be complete. Andrew could reframe such an occurrence as positive, because he could finally stop looking over his shoulder and worrying about the next massive embarrassment. He will have achieved the maximum level of humiliation possible under the circumstances. This brings me to the question, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. At one time, Andrew was second in line to be king, right behind his brother Charles. Over time, Andrew's position has slipped. At first, this was because Charles had children. Andrew slipped further when William and Harry had children. In 2026, Andrew is the 8th in line to be king. Being in the line of succession is the one honor he has not lost, although who knows what will happen in the future. It is technically possible for him to lose that as well. At some point, Andrew just gave up on trying to be a responsible member of the royal family. He focused his attention on the pursuit of pleasure. Like many wealthy and famous people, he was pulled into Jeffrey Epstein's circle of friends. When Jeffrey found himself in trouble, Andrew was slow to disengage from him. He didn't want the party to end. Andrew did not understand how much trouble he could get in simply for being associated with Jeffrey Epstein. The fall from grace Andrew experienced is unprecedented. Many of Jeffrey's friends had a sudden and catastrophic collapse in their reputations. Andrew's journey of humiliation has been a little different. Instead of falling from a tall tree into the ground straight away, he fell from a tall tree and hit every branch on the way down. Sure, the branches slowed his descent, but they also left him battered. Every time he grabbed onto a branch and thought he would not fall anymore, his hand slipped off the branch and the trip downward continued. This is particularly surprising for a person who is supposedly unable to sweat. One of the reasons the Jeffrey Epstein files are so interesting to the public is this widespread belief that there are a group of powerful elites who commit terrible offenses. Andrew will always be notorious because his actions offer support for this theory. The best outcome he can possibly hope for is to live out of prison in disgrace. His only other option appears to be living in prison with disgrace. The primary lesson that can be learned in this case applies to the wealthy and the elite. With the high level of scrutiny on these people, they need to be extra cautious about associating with people who commit crimes. A prince may be born with a lot of advantages, but not with immunity. Those are my thoughts on the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens to him. But my fever is getting worse because apparently there's only 224 likes. I might be getting to a 103-degree fever here in a minute. Now, Breaking Points is cool because there's people from both sides in the same show. You don't see that very often.
Ruthless, huh? Oh, I love it. I'm loving every second. Major breaking news as of this morning. Let's go ahead and put this up here on the screen. Prince Andrew, or I guess the prince formerly known as, Andrew formerly known as Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has now been arrested in the United Kingdom of
Look at that, Saga and Jetty stealing your jokes, Kat. The person formerly known as Prince Andrew.
suspicion of misconduct in public office. King Charles says the law must take its course, refusing to even name him as his own brother, and saying that he respects the police in their current investigation.
Man, they're ruthless, huh?
Oh, I love it. I'm loving every second of this entire thing. Quote, as part of this investigation, we have today arrested a man in his 60s from Norfolk on suspicion of misconduct in public office and are carrying out searches at addresses in Berkshire and Norfolk. The man remains in public custody at this time. We will not be naming the arrested man per national guidance. Please also remember this case is now active and should be taken with any publication to avoid being in contempt of court. So this is very different rules there in the UK. But basically, the king later confirmed this morning that Prince Andrew had been taken into custody, and there may be some misunderstanding about this whole thing. Prince Andrew is currently being investigated, not necessarily for his conduct, horrific conduct, previously with the pictures of him with the women, Virginia Giuffre, etc. And remember, he maintains his innocence. It's about the shared information that he sent Epstein, which was in the files. Remember, he was the trade advisor to the UK, and he was sharing sensitive documents, including his schedule and other inside information with.
So, by the way, as people are going to be talking about the American politicians, it's truly up to our DOJ. And we've had people that said they were going to do something about it. Who are those people? Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, and Trump himself even. They all ran on releasing the Epstein files and putting them to justice. Instead, what we got was Dan Bongino backtracking and maybe even helping to cover it up as well. So then he exits, and now he's back to being a podcaster. But Dave Smith, libertarian Dave Smith, is correctly calling people like him out because that was his job. So the American people, unfortunately for us, once we vote, that's it. You can protest, but that's it. Once you do that, that's all you can do. Vote, protest. Then it's up to the DOJ.
Epstein. That is open, clear cut, and a violation of his official duties, which he was doing at the time. That's what he's under investigation for. In addition, this is part of the Lord Mandelson investigation too, for insider trading, for stock manipulation, for, basically going after telling Jamie Dimon to try and blackmail the chancellor at the time. Like, that's the criminality that we're dealing with, not to mention Prince Andrew, ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, and all of her dealings with Epstein.
Yeah.
That's happening right now. So this goes deep in the British aristocracy, all the way up to the prince. I was telling you, Prince Andrew is now the first royal in 400 years to be arrested. The last one was King Charles I in 1647 during the English Civil War, who was then executed some 2 years later. So I would like to see some old Lindy justice here, but anyway.
And I guess the woman from France, the one who said, let them eat cake, I guess that was post that, huh? Who is that? Marie Antoinette? Marie Antoinette beheaded at the beginning of Napoleon, by the way, if you've seen that movie, Napoleon. So France didn't mess around when it came to that kind of thing, but England sometimes does.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the interesting part is, like you said, that what they're going after him for, the thing that is most concrete, is abusing the public trust by sending the sensitive information. And it is very much like what Mandelson appears to have been up to as well, and is now under investigation for too. And so, we've heard all this nonsense in the US about, oh, there's nothing here that's prosecutable, there's nothing here to investigate. It does seem like this sort of either abuse of public trust or insider trading, that is one of the avenues that could be the most clear cut in terms.
So this is Crystal Ball. She's more progressive. The guy who was originally talking, that's Saagar Enjeti, he's the Republican person. I don't know if he's even a Trump supporter at this point. He might not be anymore. I don't know.
Terms of legal consequences. But, I think it's easy to forget because we're very American centric that Ghislaine Maxwell she's British, like she's a British
She's
socialite.
from the upper crust.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
the elite of the elite.
The Epstein class of the UK. And so, she had deep ties in elite society within the UK. And so there is massive fallout there, including
up there's our boy Wexner there at the bottom too.
Keir Starmer, who already was deeply unpopular, he brought Mandelson into his government at a time when this hadn't all come out, but it was known that he had some level of close Epstein contact. And, he has now been caught in a lie. Andrew's been caught in a lie. Fergie's been caught in a lie. They all have been caught at this point in lying about the nature and the extent of their relationship with Epstein. So people are rightly saying, like, you knew that this guy was in league with Jeffrey Epstein when you chose to bring him into your government. So this has really, really created a massive crisis for him at a time when he was already politically weak with the population.
It's a huge deal. Like I said, I mean, the first royal to be arrested. So I was joking to you, Crystal, this morning. I go, it doesn't feel right to prosecute a prince. Like, it's just, it's like modernity catching up with royalty. I think he should be banished, exiled, married off against his will.
I don't agree with that, Saagar Enjeti. Why not? Why not arrest a prince?
Pilloried in the Trafalgar Square, reduced to rags in a stockade, and then everybody like businessmen on their way to work at 8 a.m. in the morning, housewives can come and heckle and throw rotten tomatoes at him. Like that's what we need to see.
Medieval
What's the point
justice.
of having a king? Why have a king in a royal in the first place? Right? It's ridiculous. So if we're gonna do it, then let's do it. Let's do it right. The Tower of London. If you're there, you can do the tourism like for the Tower of London. Like put him in there. Lock him up and let all the tourists parade past him. Chinese people could take selfies.
So you're basically arguing that they get the benefit of the archaic tradition without having to deal with the archaic, punishments that could come.
Exactly.
If they
it's not right.
step out of line.
If we're gonna,
public is
right.
disgusted
If we have the crown and the robes and the velvet and the carriages and the palaces, and then we need the other part, right? That was the interesting part for the masses. So look, I'm not British. Sometimes I wish I was, but if I was a Brit, this is what I would be demanding. I want pillory. I want reduced to rags. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show.
So a quick segment there. So now I guess we'll go to the other side. See what Ben Shapiro has to say. Then we'll go to a lefty after him.
Prince Andrew is apparently arrested on charges that we will explore in just a moment, thanks to the revelations in some of the Epstein files. We'll also get to a litany of fake victims, those fake victims ranging from James Tallarico, the Texas Democrat Senate candidate, to, yes, Tucker Carlson. First, all week we have been telling you episode 6 of the Pendragon Cycle, Rise of the Merlin, is...
Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to watch Piers Morgan first.
We've got a better person to respond, actually, because I'm now joined by David Boies.
You can always find somebody to deny anything. The idea that anybody can, with a straight face, deny that this was a massive sex trafficking scheme is between absurd and pathetic.
You may seek to depose Meghan Markle, as she may have important knowledge. Do you still think she may have information that could be useful?
I think that's quite likely. Mr. Dershowitz, like a lot of other people, would serve themselves a lot better by coming clean.
Nobody is above the law, said the UK's top prosecutor about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The former prince is facing a police investigation for leaking trade secrets to Jeffrey Epstein. A sex scandal cost him his royal status. A white-collar crime may yet cost him his freedom, and pressure is continuing to build on the former prince to testify in the US. In a country where many are frustrated about the lack of serious consequences for Epstein's pals, fueled by the idea that we still don't have the full story, this is not going away. For Andrew, or for the royal family. Well, David Boies represented the late Virginia Giuffre in her civil case against Andrew, who reportedly paid $16 million to avoid facing him. He will join me very shortly. We will begin with our expert panel. Joining me now, the Executive Director of the Foundation for Freedom Online and a former State Department official, Mike Bentz, former CIA whistleblower and host of Deep Focus with John Kiriakou. John Kiriakou.
I wonder what he blew the whistle on, a CIA whistleblower. That would be interesting to know.
The journalist and academic Michael Tracy, and the host of the Tara Palmieri Show, Tara Palmieri. Well, welcome to all of you. Tara, we've spoken a lot throughout this scandal. I've noted today that the Trump administration is now saying, that's it. We've had all the files we're going to get, even though it's believed there are 3 million more that have not been put into the public domain. And there's still no real accountability of the highest profile people named in these files. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, issued a lengthy number of names, some of which, obviously, from looking at it, are completely innocent of any criminal behavior. But of all these high-profile names that have been named, there's only one person who is languishing in prison, and that's Ghislaine Maxwell. This seems deeply unsatisfactory on so many levels.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you.
And that's a good thing, Jolly, right? Where Piers, he can go either way depending on what the subject is. But he does generally get people from all the sides, and that's one thing I do appreciate about him. I think Piers is wishy-washy himself, but he does get people from all sides. I'll give him that.
You on that, especially considering the FBI had presentations that they were putting together, which showed that they had credible tips about a variety of other men, and they never went through with those investigations. And I think a lot of people just feel like that, you know, if you read these emails, if you look through the FBI's own investigations, that they could have gone further and they could have actually prosecuted some of these men who have been accused by women in civil cases of rape, and through their meeting through Jeffrey Epstein, through I guess like Leon Black, for example. I mean, he denies the charges that are against him, and the cases were dropped, but there are other examples as well inside of the files. And yeah, just nothing has happened. It's been, I think, not just for the victims, but for everyone, a feeling that this is it. I mean, Pam Bondi just said on Sunday, case closed.
And that's horrific. I mean, I was seeing things with Pam Bondi where they were using the filter where she would be the person from The Exorcist from the beginning with the huffing and the puffing as she was screaming about the Dow when people were talking about this, which is classic what? Deflection, moving the goalposts, whataboutism, word salad.
Yeah, which it clearly isn't. And the problem with that is, if you said from the start of this, as the Republicans have, we're going to be completely transparent, and then you're self-evidently not being completely transparent. You can't hold back 3 million files and say that's all you're getting, right? The conspiracy theories will continue to rage, and I suspect there will be a series of leaks from the files that we haven't seen. So the scandal just continues. Whereas I've always felt if they just went, here you go, redacting victims' information that could lead to their identification, but just put everything out there in one hit and say, that's it. That genuinely is it. You can at least have the claim that you've been transparent.
Right. And even from the fact that...
And that's the thing. They'll say they're being transparent, and then they're anything but transparent, which is more gaslighting, right? In fact, one of these days coming up, I should break down some of Pam Bondi's stuff so I can point out the tactics in real time.
Number of members of Congress like Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna, they've gone into classified briefing rooms to see the files and what was redacted. And what they found is that, in fact, they were redacting the name of men. They weren't redacting the names of the victims. And, you know, in a number of instances, these were just men that had some connections to President Trump, some didn't, but there was no reason to redact the word less in front of Wexner, for example. There was no reason to redact the name of a Emirati businessman in the email.
So she's mentioned the two we mentioned before, right? Leon Black and Les Wexner.
About the torture video that he enjoyed. And so there's just a number of these examples, and we can only be left to wonder, well, what else? Especially since we know there are 3 million more files that we're probably never going to see, and we don't know why.
Right. Michael Tracy, you've been, a relatively lone voice out there arguing a lot of the public debate about this, especially around hidden elite networks, intelligence links, and so on, is mythologized beyond the evidence that we've seen from courts, documents, official records, and so on. This is not a popular view, but there are some who share it. Why do you feel so convinced of your position on this?
Because the central tenets of what I've taken to calling the Epstein mythology have simply never been supported by anything close to the degree of credible evidence that would justify the United States, Great Britain, and the world now being embroiled in this gigantic pedophilia crisis where people like Tara Palmieri and your next guest, David Boies, are convincing untold millions that there was some enormous child rape atrocity that was perpetrated and covered up at the highest levels of government. This is crazy-making stuff. And in fact, it wouldn't be surprising if people who come to believe this stuff and might already have a disposition toward mental illness could enter into a kind of homicidal mania. And so Tara Palmieri, I would agree with her in that there is a lot more to investigate on this subject, namely the journalistic malfeasance that's been so shockingly rampant, it's incredible. Tara Palmieri journalistically collaborated with Virginia Roberts Giuffre, didn't just use her as a source or as an inspiration, but essentially shared a byline effectively with her on the podcast series that she produced in 2020. They went around the United States saying they were just innocently on this truth-seeking mission to find out all.
So this guy, I don't know who he is, but he seems like he might be some sort of flying monkey for either the Trump administration or maybe even the royal administration, the royals. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what his angle is here, but he's giving them grief for trying to help Virginia Giuffre. So a little bit troubling if you ask me, but let's see.
That Jeffrey Epstein did to all his innocent victims. And they told the listeners, don't worry, none of this is about bringing any further lawsuits or criminal charges against anybody. So all these men we're trying to track down, they have no reason not to speak to us. Meanwhile, about a year or two later, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who, by the way, is one of the most egregious serial fabulists who's ever walked the earth. I know that's really...
I see now. So now he's smearing the dead now is what he's doing. Probably about the victim blame here too. But let's see what he says. I don't even know what he's going to say, but it's probably not going to be good.
Controversial, but all the claims that she had to retract, the trail of destruction she left in her wake, empowered by people like David Boies and Bradley Edwards, who, by the way, if you want to know what the impediment is to full disclosure of the Epstein files, just look at what David Boies' colleague, Bradley Edwards, has been frantically arguing for the past several months in federal courts in the Southern District of New York about the supposed terror and nightmares that have been unleashed if we have the Epstein files released. On the one hand, they're all sloganeering about release the Epstein files. On the other hand, they don't just want to redact the, quote, victims' names. And by the way, what happened to saying alleged victim or purported victim? Virtually none of these people have actually ever been adjudicated as victims. The only criteria that's required by the DOJ to abide by what the frantic victim lawyers are demanding is mere self-identification of...
Notice all the smearing language in how he's talking. The frantic victims defense lawyers, right? That's what people will do when they want to make you look ridiculous and smear how you look. They'll use those little kinds of adjectives. So pay attention to those.
Victimhood. Does the media make any of this clear? And does the media ever specify that when Pam Bondi is protested, last point, Piers, when Pam Bondi is being protested, last week, and everybody's going wild saying, oh, all these benighted Epstein victims are standing up and demanding truth and justice. How come it's never pointed out that, I mean, the vast majority of the people who are visible there, the victims, were adults at the time of their claimed victimization. And yet this is supposed to be some massive pedophile crisis.
So, dude, you can be an adult and a victim of SA, right?
David Boies can add to his extortion of the British royal family and now extort JP Morgan for another couple $100 million.
Well, when you say,
just
all
like
right,
he did.
all right.
That guy's wild, man. He's getting paid by somebody. You better believe it. And who is he getting paid by? Maybe the royals, maybe powerful politicians, maybe Les Wexner, maybe Leon Black, maybe Trump, maybe someone from Clinton. Who else? Maybe Israel. I don't know. Any of them could be paying him.
Today's show is sponsored by Oxford Natural, makers of the Optimum Day and in relation, look, I'm going to go to Tara to respond to that. It's only fair giving you name checked.
I don't even know.
So aggressively. All I would...
Wait a minute. There's an emergency brewing. And the emergency is I have a fever with only 300 likes. 1,000 likes cures my fever. So I don't want to have a fever by the end of this. So please like the video. Likes are free. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already.
Say, and I'll come to the other two panelists in a moment. All I would say about so-called extortion of the British royal family, the reality is that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, when he was still Prince Andrew, said he'd never met Virginia Giuffre, certainly never had sex with her on the 3 occasions in different places he was accused to do so. He said the picture of them was fabricated, etc., etc., etc. He also, in a lengthy interview for the BBC, said he never had anything more to do with Epstein after seeing him in Central Park, after his conviction, and so on. All of which turned out to be a load of baloney. At the last minute, rather than have his day in court to clear his name, Andrew paid a check reported to be £12 million to Virginia Giuffre, a woman he claimed he'd never met. The picture we now know from leaked emails by Ghislaine Maxwell in the latest dump of Epstein files, where she said were genuine. That picture was taken, right? And so I'm afraid just on that point alone, I see little extortion and just a bunch of lies from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to cover his ass. Listening to this, actually,
Piers, let's
is
stipulate that
Virginia
he did.
Giuffre's. Well, hang on, Mike. I gave you a chance to speak, and I've responded. We've got a better person to respond, actually, because I'm now joined by David Boies. David, great to have you back on Uncensored. It's been 6 months since I last spoke to you. So much has happened since then.
Right.
In relation to what we've just heard from another panel member.
Remember Mr. Rogers? He almost looks like a male version of Lady Fairchild. Obscure reference.
Which is that Virginia Giuffre was one of the least reliable witnesses imaginable. What is your response to that?
Look, you can always find somebody to deny anything. The evidence is just overwhelming. The idea that anybody can, with a straight face, deny that this was a massive sex trafficking scheme, is between absurd and pathetic. We have the testimony of dozens.
All right, so he's right on the money here, right? So he says any defense of this is between absurd and pathetic. Well said.
Dozens, many dozens of young women, girls. We have the reports of the police department in Palm Beach. We have photographs, not just the one photograph, but multiple photographs are coming out. We have the emails that set forth at least some of the efforts, including the efforts to bribe witnesses. This is not a close call. And the reason that nobody wants to go to court and that people settle has nothing to do with extortion. It has to do with, they don't have a case. If somebody has a case, they can stand up and defend themselves. This is a situation.
So Piers introduced him, but I don't remember his name. I wish they had their names there.
In which all of the evidence is on one side. I'm in a lot of cases that that are close cases. One side has a point of view, another side has a point of view. There's evidence on both sides. And you have to make close calls. This is not one of them.
David, in relation to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, now saying that's it, we've had all the Epstein files that is going to be put in the public domain, notwithstanding the fact we've been told there are 3 million more files which will never see the light of day in terms of being put in front of the public. What is your response to that? Does that in any way constitute full transparency on these files?
Well, it's clearly not full transparency. We haven't begun to have full transparency.
All right. Very true statement, right? So you start small. You want to hear them tell the truth about things. And he's very correct. There's been nowhere close to full transparency here. It's a good sign.
We have more transparency, thanks really to Congress. We have more transparency than we've had before. And I think you see in the documents that are now being revealed why people fought
so his name in the red here is David Boyce. Thank you for that, Nancy.
Hard, powerful people, rich people, politically connected people, powerful people in business, in politics, fought so hard to keep this evidence secret. There's more evidence there. We know there's more evidence there. They're admitting there's more evidence there. Some of the documents that they have produced refer to other documents that have not been produced. So we know that there's more there. And perhaps Congress, perhaps the courts have got to step in and have got to say to the Department of Justice, do your job, be transparent. Legislation, bipartisan legislation, was passed requiring the Justice Department to be transparent, to produce all these documents. Abiding by the law is part of what makes this country great. It's part of what has made the United States, and before that United States, the United Kingdom, really a beacon to the world. You can't just ignore the law. And I'm confident that this is not the end of it. I'm confident that we will continue to get to the bottom of things.
You told me 6 months ago that you'd looked into the claims of criminal wrongdoing by both President Trump and by former President Bill Clinton. You said you were quite confident neither of them had any involvement of the sex trafficking or any sexual activities. First, is that still your position from everything you've now seen from the files that have been put out?
I've not seen anything that would cause me to change my mind on that. I think that both former President Clinton and President Trump would say that they regret their association with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. I think that there were certainly aspects of poor judgment involved. And I think it was a reflection of how tolerant we were of the abuse of young women and girls, that very high-placed people would work with, socialize with somebody like Jeffrey Epstein. But I don't see any evidence that either one of them participated in any of the sex trafficking, or actually prior to the time that they stopped dealing with him, really were aware of the sex trafficking.
The other thing you said to me, that you felt there were between 10 and 20 men who you felt the government had enough information, evidence on, that would justify at least a serious prosecutorial investigation, and that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the former Prince Andrew, was one of these men and was given a pass. Is that still, again, your position?
Yes, I mean, I think I might amend it. I probably should have amended it 6 months ago, but 20 men and women. I don't think it's just limited to men, unfortunately.
So there were women also perpetrating crimes.
Well, Ghislaine Maxwell, for one. And did you know Ghislaine Maxwell has been allowed to get a puppy in prison? Did you know that? She's in this place in Texas and she's getting all these favors. I think what they're trying to do for her is set her up to, for her to get immunity or clemency or whatever the word would be, to make Trump and others look good. I think that's kind of what they're shooting for. So right now she has a puppy and she has all this special treatment that she probably shouldn't have.
Yes. And certainly engage in activity that is worth investigating. I don't want to try to make a judgment without looking at all the evidence about whether anybody actually committed a crime. But a lot of people acted very wrongfully, improperly, and there's enough evidence of criminality to warrant an investigation.
Should Andrew Mountbatten Windsor now come to the United States and face the music under oath in front of Congress, in your opinion?
Absolutely. I think he's got an obligation to tell what he knows. Now, I also think that if he's afraid of being arrested in the United States, we ought to give him safe passage to come to the United States to testify. Because I think we don't want there to be any excuse for him not coming and telling what he knows. But he knows a lot. How much, I don't know myself, because they gave up in the litigation we had against them just before his deposition was supposed to be taken. So I don't think anybody knows how much he knows, but we know he knows a lot from his contact. And whatever he knows, even if it was a little bit, I think he has an obligation to share that.
Do you believe that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor committed crimes? I mean, obviously, you represented Virginia Giuffre. She made very serious allegations of criminal behavior by him against her.
The moment of truth appears at asking him straight and directly, do you think Andrew committed crimes? Let's see what David here has to say.
Do you believe that he committed crimes?
I think that it certainly is something that justifies an investigation. What he knew and when he knew.
That's a wishy-washy answer there by him. Something that justifies an investigation. Not quite as decisive as you would like.
Knew it, what he knew about her age, what he knew about the extent to which he was coerced, she was coerced, I think needs to be decided by investigators, prosecutors, and ultimately by judge or jury. He certainly engaged in terribly wrongful conduct. He clearly knew.
So he's engaged in terribly wrongful conduct, but still the kind of wishy-washy answer. Interesting.
That Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell were trafficking these girls. Now, whether he knew that they were underage, whether he knew that there was force and coercion involved, that is something that is a state of mind that I think before I made a judgment on that, I'd want to see more evidence. But it's certainly something that's was worth investigating. Whether statute of limitations have now passed, I think is a question. But
and again, I guess that all depends, right, on each country's laws. What are the statute of limitations? That unfortunately is a thing. Now, when it comes to murder, there is no statute of limitations, but I think with other things there might be.
I have been, as you know, I have been very disappointed in the authorities in the United States and in the United Kingdom for not doing this investigation in a timely way.
There's been a lot of pressure on King Charles in the UK to take more action against his brother. He has removed his titles, and Andrew has now moved from a very luxurious home to a much smaller but still pretty luxurious home that will be paid for by the king.
So apparently the statute of limitations is 20 years for SA, I guess. I'm not sure if that's just England or if that's America too.
king, including a staff and so on. What should King Charles do? A lot of people are asking that question. In your opinion, what should he do?
Yeah. I think that's really hard. Andrew has lost his title. He's lost his home. He's lost almost all of his friends. He's lost the ability probably ever to make a living. He is, after all, Charles's brother. And I think it's a special situation when he's also the king. And he's got responsibilities to the nation as well as to his family. But I would not want to be in Charles's position.
You said in 2021 that you may seek to depose Meghan Markle, Prince Harry's wife, as part of Virginia's civil suit against Andrew, as she may have important knowledge about the then prince's behavior. Is that something, do you still think she may have information that could be useful?
Oh, I think that's quite likely. Now, whether she has any information that we don't already know, I think is more doubtful. We know so much more now than we did when we started the lawsuit against then Prince Andrew. So whether she has anything to add today, I'd be less certain. But she certainly was in a position to know a lot about Prince Andrew.
So here's what ChatGPT has to say. Does SA have a statute of limitations? Yes, SA can have a statute of limitations, but it depends entirely on the jurisdiction, country, state, and sometimes on when the crime occurred. Below is a clear breakdown. The US. There is no single national rule. Each state sets its own statute of limitations, and many have changed them over time. Common patterns across states. 1. No statute of limitations. Many states now allow SA or rape to be prosecuted at any time. So some of them have none. This is especially common for SA of a minor, cases involving DNA evidence, first degree or aggravated SA. Extended time limits. Some states impose limits such as 10 to 20 years after the crime. That's interesting. Again, in America, they can have so many different rules depending on the state. A certain number of years after the victim turns 18, a certain number of years after the crime is reported. 3, old cases. Important. Changes to statutes usually do not apply retroactively unless the legislature explicitly allowed it. That means a case might be time barred even if today's law has no limit, depending on when the crime occurred and when the law changed. So then it goes into differences between state, California, New York, Texas, Pennsylvania. So New York, no statute of limitations for first degree SA, which means maybe the other degrees do. Interesting.
We've also seen the downfall of Lord Mandelson, who was the UK ambassador to the United States. He lost his job. He's now being investigated by the British police, not least because he appeared to be trading highly classified information about what the UK government was doing when he was a business minister. So he's in very hot water then. But again, he has so far resisted going to the United States to testify in front of Congress. Do you feel the same way towards him as you would towards Andrew, given Mandelson's clearly lied about the nature of his relationship with Epstein and was clearly around him, including on the island and everything, for a sustained long period of years?
I believe that everyone who has information ought to share that information. You still have, as you saw earlier on your program, people who are denying the existence of the facts that are in front of all of us. And I think particularly in that context, it's important that everybody who has information come forward and provide that information honestly. As I say, I think that I would feel the same way about Lord Mandelson as I do about Andrew, that if they're prepared to come to the United States and testify under oath.
And here's the thing. I think a lot of people are willing to come forward. I just don't think there's very many victims advocates in positions of power. So whether it's Trump's DOJ, Pam Bondi, And then people like Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, they don't have any advocates. And so there was a question asked in one of these hearings. They asked Pam Bondi, or people, the victims, when Pam Bondi was there, oh, raise your hand if Pam Bondi refused to meet with you. And they all raised their hands. But who you can give a high five to are Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. So again, and they're two Republicans and a Democrat. So they're the ones that really have kind of went to bat for them. So I really appreciate that.
They ought to be free to do that without worrying about that the United States is going to seize them at the border. But I do think they've got an obligation to come forward. And perhaps they could even testify if they didn't want to come to the United States. Perhaps they could even testify in the United Kingdom. I believe Congress would send representatives over to the United Kingdom to take their testimony. But one way or another, I think there is no excuse, none, for them not providing the evidence that they have, not providing the information that they have about the sex trafficking.
No, I completely agree. I had Alan Dershowitz on the show a couple of days ago, and
Alan Dershowitz, he's one of the worst of all. For those who don't know, Alan Dershowitz was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer. And according to some of the defendants, they said the amount that Alan Dershowitz is okay with is out of control. And then he threatens to sue anyone that even mentions his name. But other people were like, you know what? I'd welcome it. I think who was welcoming it? Anna Kasparian. Anna Kasparian was welcoming it because she's like, hey, I have all the receipts. I would love to get this in front of a jury or in front of a judge because I'm going to say everything I know. How about that, Alan Dershowitz?
He went to great pains. He was obviously Epstein's attorney for a long period of time. He went to great pains to try and defend Epstein's original conviction as not being a confession of being a pedophile. He said that in the end, Epstein only pled guilty to soliciting prostitution from a girl of 17 years and 10 months and a 21-year-old young woman, and said that's not a pedophile. What is your reaction to that? And is he telling the whole story there?
I don't know why Alan Dershowitz continues to try to defend what is just indefensible.
Well said there, at least. Well said.
He ought to take responsibility for his actions. He ought to take responsibility for what he told the British press back at the time when he was representing Epstein. I've had my own issues with him, and I really don't want to, go after him more than I already have.
And I wonder why he's saying that. Probably because of what I just said. Alan Dershowitz is sue happy. So he's like, I've had problems with him, which might mean, well, he sued me before and I don't want to be sued again. Is that what he's saying?
I don't think it's reasonable to say that he only acted as a lawyer. He acted as a publicist, dealing with the press, telling the press incorrectly that Epstein had passed a lie detector test, which he didn't. I think that everybody who was involved with Epstein needs to step up and take responsibility for their role. And I think the more that they deny, I think the worse it is. However they thought at the time, they now know it's.
So OC, Virginia Giuffre was a victim of former Prince Andrew, or at least an alleged victim. But they say she ended her own life, but chances are that is not what happened, that she was probably murdered, unfortunately. But yes, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. It's the only thing that cures my fever. Getting to 1,000 likes puts me into very good health. And please remember to subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I go live every night to talk about true crime and current events. And I use my experience with narcissistic abuse, mental health, and addiction to give my unique perspective on those things. And also, there's a great flock of black sheep here in the live chat. Come in and say hello. We don't bite.
Facts are. And whatever justifications they thought they have, they know those justifications are false. I think that everybody ought to take responsibility for what they did and for their support, assistance of what was going on. So I think Mr. Dershowitz, like a lot of other people, would serve themselves a lot better by coming clean.
And finally, David Boies, Ghislaine Maxwell refused to give any answers to questions before the House committee last week, but said she may testify in exchange for clemency from President Trump. What's your response to that?
There is no basis, none, for clemency. To give clemency or a pardon to a person who played the role that she did in the victimization of dozens, hundreds of young girls and young women would be a travesty. I think that the chances that President Trump's going to do that are small. But I think if that were to happen, it would be an outrage. She has no position or right to try to bargain for her evidence. The people of the United States, the people of the United Kingdom, the people of the world have a right to know her evidence. And although she has a right against self-incrimination, she can be granted immunity for her testimony. That is, she can be granted immunity for the testimony in the sense that the testimony cannot be used against her. But she's already in jail. Nobody needs to use that testimony to convict her. And if she fails to give that testimony after being granted immunity, she can be held in contempt. And she can be held in contempt and in prison for just as long as necessary. And the special treatment that the administration has given her.
And I'll tell you, of all the people in the world right now, there would be a lot of people that would love to sit down with Ghislaine Maxwell to get a true tell-all from Ghislaine Maxwell. That would be pretty interesting and valuable. Now, granted, as long as her freedom's on the line, you're never going to get it. You're never going to get it unless she gets some sort of immunity or clemency or fill in the blank. But wouldn't that be something? It would also be something to hear what Mr. Bill Clinton would say, and what Donald Trump would say, and what Richard Branson would say, and what Bill Gates would say, and what who else? Whoever else was a big wig over there.
Taking her out of the ordinary prison, putting her in a much more comfortable prison, is an act of grace. It's an act that I think itself was a terrible mistake. But there's no reason, none, to try to coddle her and bargain with her for her testimony.
I just took a quick look at the prediction markets. Polymarket currently say there's just a 17% chance that anyone will be jailed over Epstein disclosures. Would you?
17% chance. And I mean, guess what? This is the betting market. So if anything's going to be accurate and give an accurate prediction, it's the betting markets. So they say 17% chance. Now, which means not very high. But here's an interesting question posed by Cap. If this is a poll question now, if Ghislaine Maxwell gets immunity, Would it be worth it for you if she can get and give a tell-all if it means convictions for others, if it means Ghislaine gets off the hook? Would you be okay with that trade? So, granted, and this is only if, to me, she's going to be completely honest. It would not be right if she fabricates her story at all to placate somebody that gave her the immunity. That, to me, that would ruin the whole thing. But say, for sake of argument, no, she's not holding anything back. And she doesn't hold anything back, and it leads to convictions. But then she walks. Would that be a fair trade to you? Press 1 for yes and 2 for no.
Agree with that?
Oh, I hope not. I think that is illustrative of the cynicism that people have about our justice system and the prosecutors. I think that's a reflection of the cynicism that people have about our Justice Department today. The cynicism that more than 4 out of 5 people think that our Justice Department is going to give a pass to people because they're rich and powerful. I think that's a tragedy.
Yeah, it is. David Boies, thank you so much. It's great to have you back on our channel.
I mean, and let's face it, I've mentioned this many times in the chat, but the rich and powerful, they do play by different rules. I mean, if anything, this whole case proves that more than anything, right? They play by their own set of rules. If you read Iceberg Slim's autobiography, he's a pimp from the 1930s and 40s. That's the joke that he made. He said, Lady Justice has a blindfold because her eyes are made of dollar signs. And he knew that back in the 30s, so how much has it changed? Not very much. Which also leads you to the other book by Smedley Butler, War is a Racket, every money being about war. Also true. Oh, every war being about money. That's what I meant to say. But it is unfortunate.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you.
Well, let's go back to the panel there. Be bringing John Kiriakou. I mean, David Boies is always extraordinarily impressive. He's one of the great criminal lawyers in modern American history with an extraordinary track record.
So apparently, though, most people in the chat said it would be a fair trade. That if she tells all and they get convictions and she walks. So he said that'd be fair. Okay.
What did you make of what he was saying there?
Oh, I agreed with everything he said. You know, it's like we never.
Well, the question was, if Ghislaine tells all and doesn't hold anything back, doesn't try to do anything to save the people that granted her human immunity, and they get convictions out of it, but she walks, would that be a fair trade for people? You get convictions, she tells all, but she walks. One would be, what did I say it was? One would be, I can't remember the numbers I did, but 1 was yes, 2 was no, I think I said. Yeah, 1 yes, 2 no.
Learn from history, Piers. We didn't learn from Watergate or from Iran-Contra that the cover-up of the crime is almost always worse than the crime. It's always better just to be honest, because the truth will out eventually anyway. So just be honest. If there are 3 million more documents, by God, release the 3 million more documents. Let's let justice run its course. And I want to agree with another thing he said. I thought that Ghislaine Maxwell was already given her gift when she was transferred from a low security prison to a minimum security prison. There's an internal Bureau of Prisons policy that prohibits people convicted of child sex crimes from serving their time in a minimum security prison, because minimum security prisons have no bars on the windows, no locks on the doors. You're free to come and go as you please. You're just on your honor not to abscond.
I did not know that, but that's where Ghislaine is, a minimum security prison. And apparently it's against the rules for people that have been convicted of child sex crimes to be there. Can you believe that? Well, in this day and age, I would believe anything, but that's where she is. And she has a puppy.
Can't be sent to maximum or medium security prisons because they'll be killed there. in many cases. So they have to go to low security prisons, which are secure, but not minimum. She's in a minimum, and she's the only child sex criminal in a minimum security prison. It's just wrong.
It is completely outrageous. And on the other point that I discussed the other day, and Alan Dershowitz vehemently denied this, but there's growing evidence from these leaked documents that Epstein was working with Israel in some capacity. Do you believe he was a full-fledged Mossad agent?
I've said from the very beginning, including right here on the show.
So before he gets into his answer, this is what I know about it. So Netanyahu, we all know the prime minister of Israel, he was trying to make it clear Epstein wasn't working for me. He was in cahoots with Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak was the prime minister of Israel in the 90s. But here's the thing. Barak, he was also head of Israeli intelligence. So Netanyahu can try to say there's a distinction there, but it's a difference without a distinction is what it is, because they're both the same. So, okay, you don't want to say Epstein's working for Mossad? Well, he's still working for some kind of Israeli intelligence. How about that? So what Netanyahu was saying was a little bit ridiculous.
That I've always believed he was a Mossad access agent. Maybe not polygraphed, formally recruited, but he was working on behalf of Mossad, I believe.
See, that's exactly right. So he's saying he wasn't necessarily Mossad, but he was Mossad adjacent, Israeli intelligence adjacent.
To get them access to important people and closely held information that they otherwise would not have had access to. But now we also know from the latest tranche of documents that he had actively sought contact with the CIA and the FBI, and that he had sought contact with MI5 and MI6 and possibly even the Germans. So he was out there as what we would call in the intelligence community an intelligence broker, somebody who has a little bit of information.
Well, Kelly, that might be true. He did talk to Russian elites, not Putin, but Russian elites. But Epstein himself was a Jewish supremacist.
Or access to information, and is looking to see who's willing to pay what for it.
Mike Benz, thank you for your patience in waiting so long to talk. You're a former US State Department official. You served in the first Trump administration. You've become more critical of the government since then. First of all, your reaction to David Boies and that interview we just did.
Well, I think it's generally right. There's the question of, I'm more concerned about, as John pointed out, the cover-up. I think it's been, I'm not sure what the point of trying to contest the, sort of evil nature of what was done. That to me matters much less than the protection of it by institutions in our government, whether they be the Justice Department, the FBI, intelligence services, or oligarchs on the outside who want to hide their own relations. That, to me, is really what the heart of the scandal has moved to in the 7 years after his death and the absence.
So, Sarah, if the survivors were against that deal, then I would side with the survivors, whatever, because they're the ones that have been through it, right?
Of questions. What I would add is that Congress can actually take an additional step with the, I'm reminded of the George Bush 2003 speech, mission accomplished, after we invaded Iraq. This is kind of what this feels like, to say, we've turned over everything, mission accomplished. By the way, there's 3 million more files. We have zero information from the Central Intelligence Agency or the State Department. The State Department actually leased Jeffrey Epstein a 5-story mansion that he stayed in for free for extended periods after it seized it from the government of Iran. While Jeffrey Epstein's own personal history in the CIA and foreign intelligence adjacent spaces date back to the 1970s and the kind of Iran, Middle Eastern, and Latin American operations there. It seems very obvious at this point that there are entire troves, both within DOJ and CIA and state, that need to be turned over. What can be done right now, I think, to move the ball forward in both what David was saying and what folks like John mentioned here is in 1992, after the outpouring of anger that happened after Oliver Stone's JFK movie, there was a bill passed by Congress. It was called the John F. Kennedy Records Collection Act that forced the CIA to turn over or to set up an independent auditing board to begin the process of reviewing and declassifying documents. So you can do the same mechanism here. If the Justice Department is saying there's 3 million we're not turning over, pass another bill. Who's going to be on the other side of it? This one passed 427-1 in the House and 99-0 in the Senate. Pass a bill and force them to be reviewed by an independent auditing board. And don't just make it DOJ, FBI, extend it to the intelligence services the same way that both chambers of Congress passed in 1992 around JFK.
Fascinating. Michael Tracy, was there anything David Boies said giving you pause for thought?
I have to say, Piers, I'm a bit disappointed that you didn't ask him a single challenging question. I invite you to ask me any challenging question you'd like.
Oh my
and
God.
you'd think
this is the king of all flying monkeys here. Oh my God. I got to look up who this guy is. He's working for somebody.
that given David Boies' stature and him being hailed as this legendary criminal attorney, that maybe he could tolerate one or two probing questions that might be outstanding, such as amongst these files that have been produced as of January 30th are a memo that memorializes internal deliberations amongst prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, in which they frankly convey that they are stunned as to how outlandishly non-credible Virginia Roberts Giuffre was when they interviewed her in September 2019. This memo is December 2000.
So the question for you would be then, sir, what exactly made her not so credible? Tell me your facts. Don't just say it. Why do you think it? Because without the evidence, you're just smearing.
19. David Boies represented Virginia, including as to the lawsuit that was brought against Prince Andrew. And yes, it was an extortionist lawsuit, but the British royal family is incredibly feckless. They are not going to challenge any of the premises that are being marshaled against him to foment this mass hysteria and moral panic. And therefore, everybody takes the resolution of that lawsuit to mean that there was some concession to Prince Andrew's guilt. Even if we want to stipulate that he did have some sort of sexual contact with Virginia Roberts Giuffre when it was alleged to have taken place, she would have been above the legal age of consent in England. And yet we're told this is a giant pedophilic sex trafficking crisis. But you know what the files show us? That the government investigators who were on a warpath at this point against Epstein and then Maxwell discovered no credible evidence of any pedophilic sex trafficking or.
So notice his language here. He keeps on using that P word, but he's not mentioning the SA word. And I bet you that's very intentional.
Any sex trafficking at all to any third-party individuals, which was the crux of the mythology that Virginia Roberts Giuffre incubated, that Tara Palmieri amplified so lamentably credulously, and that David Boies actualized in the legal filings that he carried out on her behalf. This is outrageous.
All right.
This is a fraud that's been perpetrated on the public by.
What does this remind me of also? It's like a black sheep or a scapegoat of a dysfunctional family system or a narcissistic family system. When they speak the truth, what happens? The dysfunctional system blames them, scapegoats them, and says, no, you're actually the problem for speaking up. And that's what this guy's doing here. He's like, oh, actually, Virginia's the problem. She's not to be believed. Of course not. Because whoever's paying me doesn't want her to be believed. That's the translation.
By a conspiracy, you know what the conspiracy is? The conspiracy is this unthinking, brainless hysteria combined with journalistic credulity, combined with an unwillingness to do any actual research as to the facts and evidence, and to treat David Boies like you just did. Now, why didn't you ask him about the 30% in attorney's fees that he convinced Judge Rakoff in the Southern District of New York to reward him for his almost $350+ million lawsuits against Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan that he's now trying to extract even more from Bank of America, which is why
Can I
he's
ask
trying
a
to
question?
You've
prevent
made
the
your-
disclosure
you've
of
made your
Epstein files
speech.
because he doesn't want to
Wait,
undercut his
can-
case.
Do you know what?
Why
I'm
didn't you ask
hearing.
him, Piers?
I'm hearing it.
Can I ask a
I'm hearing.
question?
I'm hearing. I'm hearing a lot of conspiracy theories, but they're all coming out of your mouth. Let me give the final word.
So basically, he's just trying to smear. But hopefully, Piers gives this woman here on the right, who was just waiting patiently the entire time. Let's see what she has to say in closing. I think she's going to say something good.
Word to Tara because he
What
keeps.
conspiracy theory did I postulate?
He keeps
Shut. He should be muted. Shut up.
when he's not lecturing.
Piers.
When he's not lecturing me about my interview skills, he's lecturing you about your journalistic skills. So your response to that and to what David Boyes had to say.
Please, Tara, go ahead, defend it.
I don't know, Michael. Have you ever actually listened to any of the tapes at the Palm Beach? You know, the police
Look at this guy. He looks like a villain. Looks like a comic book villain.
in Palm Beach, the detective. Have you listened to any of the girls that they interviewed that were as young
I've
as
listened to them all.
14? Yeah, and you think that they're
I've
not
listened
credible?
to it all, Tara.
You don't think that entire pyramid scheme in a high school?
Do you think
in
Virginia
nearby-
Robisque Freight's credible? She had nothing to do with that initial Palm Beach investigation. We're talking about your former journalist.
Stop over talking her and let her talk. I hate that. This is also a tactic too, by the way. Just keep on talking and just keep on over talking. So whatever the other person's trying to say, you just can't hear it. That's a tactic.
The collaborator who had to recant allegations against Dershowitz, had to recant her allegations
Right,
against
let her speak,
a
please.
Harvard
Let her
professor,
speak.
Stephen Koslin, recanted against
Let her speak.
Jean-Luc Brunel. So you defend
Piers, you're gonna have to mute him because he's not gonna listen.
the credibility
Let her speak or I'll cut your
of
mic.
your journalistic collaborator. Go ahead.
Do you work? Who do you work for, Michael? Because I've never met anyone in my
I'm sorry,
entire
what?
life who would like who's paying you? Who do you work for? I think a lot of people are wondering this because I've never seen anyone quite like you going after.
A very good question by Tara, right? Who's paying you? Les Wexner? Leon Black? Someone else? Alan Dershowitz? Rothschilds?
Victims of sex crimes and attacking them like this. So you must be being paid by someone in power who does not like these accusations that have been made against them. And I think it's fair to ask, are you being paid by any of the men who've been accused by Jeffrey Epstein?
Silence. That was the longest silence he had the whole freaking time. So he's guilty. He's like, how do I lie? How do I lie about this?
I'm having trouble hearing right now. I wish I could respond to whatever nonsense she just blurted out.
Now he's having trouble hearing the old "I can't hear you" excuse. Oh God, this guy's a great example of all the tactics. Mr. CIA whistleblower says, "Nah, man, I see through you." Look at that smile.
Asking you if you have ever been paid by any of the men who have been accused of crime.
Maybe somebody can
astonishing,
audio feed
an
right now so I can
astonishing,
hear
an
whatever she's spewing.
astonishing coincidence that you suddenly lost your hearing when you were asked a very difficult question, and
swear to
rather
God.
telling it.
Exactly. Pierce is on this one at least. And see, Mr. CIA whistleblower knows it too. Tara knows it too. This guy here, I don't know what his deal is. I think he's on the right side, but he just looks confused. This guy's just a villain. Michael, I guess his name is.
I may say.
I heard it.
Okay,
Can
no,
I ask
I'm
him-
not saying you didn't get
Curious,
cut. I'm
if he
just
can
saying.
hear- if he can hear you, can you ask him that question? Because he can't hear me, but maybe he can hear you asking that question.
Yeah,
I think it's a fair
Michael, can
question
you
to
hear
ask.
me?
Did you
Can
just?
you hear
I
me,
can hear you
Michael?
very faintly. Did you just allege that I'm somehow implicated in the Epstein criminality, or did I mishear you?
I asked you
No,
if you were being
Tara
paid
asked
by
if you're
anyone.
being. Tara asked if you're being paid by anybody to smear.
This is narcissistic tactics in real time here, right? I can't hear you. Smearing, over talking.
The victims of
See,
the Epstein
rather than
scandal.
defend the merits of her journalistic output, which she can't because it's indefensible, what does she do? She tries to impugn me personally, tries to imply or
You're not
allege
answering
what's the
some
answer
kind
to the
of corrupt
question?
motive. Of
Yeah,
course, I'm not
that's a
being
yes
or
paid
no
by
question.
anyone. I am paid by my
It's a yes or
readers
no
on
question.
Substack, you idiot. You just can't engage on the merits, Tara.
So what we should do next is we got to find out his name and we'll figure out what he is.
You are a disgrace.
I mean,
you
I'm
are
happy
going
to
to
go
be
through all of my
remembered as
reporting,
somebody
which
who was
was
integral
fact-checked.
in phone.
The thing is, he was only moving the goalposts, deflecting. He wasn't addressing anything either. He was just smearing without evidence.
Fomenting this moral panic and mass hysteria that's led to.
And by the way, Piers, you should put their names on there so we know who we're even listening to.
Mass defamation like you just tried against me. You know how Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie got caught a few days ago accusing a random auto mechanic in New York?
Oh my God. Now this guy's a piece of work if he's coming after Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna.
And a random IT manager of having been complicit in pedophilic sex crimes? You're just following on in that tradition, which is so emblematic of how this issue has functioned in the popular mind.
I'm going to give
now
Tara.
it's being weaponized politically.
Tara, let me just.
Of course, Piers.
Tara,
I resent the implication.
no.
I resent the question. I asked her straightforward questions about her own journalistic work.
Okay. I'm going to Tara now.
Single aspect of it.
You don't just get to
Instead, she
talk
tries to
ad
do her
infinitum.
whole little defamation song and dance because she can't actually engage in an intelligent way because there's no defense. to what
Tara,
she's
let
done.
me.
No, there is.
Nor for David.
Someone in the chat asked, why is he yelling? And it's because hit dogs holler, as they say.
Let me ask.
I can talk about my reporting on the Broken Jeffrey Epstein
Tara, let me ask
podcast.
you. Tara, you don't need to justify your reporting. It's been excellent on the whole scandal.
Why not?
Tara, let me just ask you.
I'll justify
what was your?
mine.
Let me ask Tara. What was your response to David Boies' interview? Finally.
You know, I think David Boies has done a lot of incredible work. And I know that to go after, the Crown was a really big deal, especially for his firm. They're obviously one of the biggest firms in the world. And so to target, the monarchy is a really big deal when you have offices in London, and that can affect, as anyone would know as a lawyer. So, and I think it's great that his partner, I'm blanking on her name right now. She's really earned the trust of the victims, and they're really hard cases to pursue. I mean, when you go after the most powerful people in the world, you can't represent them either. And when you have a white shoe law firm, it's like, how are you supposed to do that? So I think it's incredible. I think it's very commendable. Excuse me. And there's still so much more to do, though. There's still so many more places to go. And unfortunately, I just don't see it coming from the Southern District of New York. Like, in particular with Leon Black, I mean, the man who was picked to replace Leon Black by Leon Black himself, like, he picked his own successor, and that man is Jay Clayton. And now Jay Clayton is running the Southern District of New York. He is the lead prosecutor. And is he really going to do an investigation into the guy who picked him to succeed him at Apollo Management when he had to step down? When Leon Black had to step down because of an Epstein investigation, found that he paid Epstein $150 million to do estate planning. It's just, everything is so incestuous. And how are we supposed to trust that power will police itself? We can't. And that's
where journalists, you know what? That's where journalists like you come in, and where lawyers like David Boies come in. I've got to leave it there. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you.
Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan.
Interesting indeed. So that Michael Tracy guy, apparently he's a professor at the University of Colorado. But whatever it is, it's not very good. Not good. Not good one bit. So tell me though, chat, Hassan, Ben Shapiro, or David Pakman? Or someone else?
Hard and worked smart, and that's why he must rule over me. The lie that it tells the average commoner is that one day you too can be a king. Now, monarchs didn't do that, but that lie, I think, has given capitalism its staying power. But how can you look at the system and think it's anything different than feudalism when American oligarchs are not being punished, but monarchs are. I mean, that's a whole ass prince. Now, I don't know how hard they'll get punished, but this is more scrutiny for a whole ass prince.
Now, me personally, I do listen to everybody. I mean, I know some people trigger certain people, but I'll listen to Hassan, Destiny, Ben Shapiro, Nick Fuentes, who else? Kyle Kulinski, David Pakman, Heather Cox Richardson, Dave Smith. I truly try to listen to everybody because I think you have to listen to them all to get all of the different perspectives out there. And that's what I try to do. But it helps me to become well-rounded, I'll say. And just because I listen to them doesn't mean I agree with everything they say, or even the majority sometimes.
Then we have offered our princes, our lordship, our elites.
He was stripped of all royal titles last year and has been under mounting pressure to testify in front of the U.S. Congress.
How long have you known about Andrew and Epstein?
King Charles and Queen Camilla earlier this month said they stand ready to support the police in their investigation. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer applied political pressure.
Everybody is equal under the law and nobody is above the law, and it applies, and it has to apply in this case in the same way as
not to your buddies though. I mean, your buddies were heavily involved too, your besties, right?
At last today, our broken hearts have been lifted at the news that no one is above the law, not even royalty. On behalf of our sister, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, we extend our gratitude to the UK Thames Valley Police for their investigation and the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He was never a prince for survivors everywhere. Virginia did this for you.
It is kind of funny to me, though, that it's like CBS News has royal contributors. Like, we got CBS News on the royalty beat. That blows my mind, okay? That blows my mind. What are we doing? I guess it's good. I don't know. But, like, Norfolk should be on potentially having a beat on labor, maybe? I don't know. Literally, we all have royal correspondents on all the networks. Yeah, it's crazy to me. Maybe I'm too woke for this. I don't know. Maybe I'm not cut out for this, but I think, like, the royalty beat is crazy, especially in America.
Yeah, I'm wondering, it was stunning. For us here in the United States, did you all have any heads up? Was there any talk that this was possibly in the works? Were you all as surprised as we were here in the U.S.?
There has been momentum building over the last few days, Gail. We saw yesterday.
Oh, there's a bunch of other people I listen to, too. You just reminded me of Matt Taibbi. Dan Carlin is probably my favorite person to listen to, if anyone knows who that is. He had a Common Sense podcast in Hardcore History. But I also listen to Sam Harris, Mehdi Hassan. I listen to Zionists. What's the other guy's name? I truly listen to everybody, right? Whether Zionists, Nazis, all of them. Communists, capitalists.
I think an accumulation of around 7 or 8 police forces getting involved. We also had the involvement announced yesterday of the NCA, which is our national crime agency, sometimes described as the British FBI. So there has been a feeling that police forces could no longer not look at this very seriously, and I think it has been moving in one direction. That said, to see those police cars arriving, about 8 of them this morning, at the Sandringham estate, at Wood Farm, where Andrew is temporarily staying, is quite a moment. This is the King's brother who has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in a public office. The first senior royal to ever be arrested.
One immediate comparison here, obviously, is like how unimaginably powerful our, liberal capitalist system has created beacons of power that are equivalent to the lords of the past, right? Under, feudalism, 100%. Like Elon Musk is literally a god king, right? And what's interesting to me is that liberal capitalism is so successful at creating a process that shifts people's attention away from that indecent consolidation of power that is unchecked, that we will offer kings and princes as the sacrificial lamb before we approach a banker. Think about that. This motherfucker was a prince. Liberal capitalism is so domineering a force that a monarch who is second in line to the throne will get thrown to slaughter before we touch a banker that has done the same that Prince Andrew has done. It's not even a question. Even people who work at the behest of those bankers, at the behest of that international pedophilic cabal, people like Mendelsohn, who were directly aligned with Jeffrey Epstein, who were working at the interest of American capital and international capital, those guys don't receive this level of scrutiny. It is crazy. Think about that. We all understand in our hearts as children that have been born into an environment where liberalism is the monoculture, is the hegemonic, domineering superstructure. We know liberalism. We've learned about liberalism. We know that it's an evolution away from monarchies. We know monarchies are bad. They're undemocratic. We believe in the democratic process. But how is this Epstein not causing you to realize that that consolidation of power that existed in monarchies is still very much intact right now? It's crazy. We're all a bunch of serfs, man. We're serfs with iPhones, basically. We're serfs that eat hot Cheetos, and we delude ourselves into thinking that we've achieved freedom. We've deluded ourselves into thinking that we live in a just process where justice will be served. And sure, maybe we have more freedoms in some ways. There's a court system that's supposed to be intact. There's a court system that's supposed to adjudicate evenly. But when push comes to shove and the very wealthy, very powerful get caught with their pants down, sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively, no punishments come for them. If you are a regular working class individual and you get caught with a baggie of cocaine, you're receiving a heavy penalty. If you're black and you get caught with a bag of crack, you receive an even larger penalty. If you're RFK Jr., a member of the American royalty, you can talk about how you did cocaine off of toilet seats and you're fine. You're the head of the HHS. If you are...
RFK did do that in the 80s, apparently, yes. But you know, I mean, what they did in the 80s, I'm not, with this drugs, and granted, the bar is low here, right? The bar is not essaying of kids. That's the bar for some of these people.
Leon Black, and you've been for years under legal scrutiny in and out of court cases for all of the victims that you participated in this international sex trafficking conspiracy with as a co-conspirator, you can still maintain your billions of dollars. Nothing happens. I mean, that's not a real just process at all. That's not a real system of justice. That's not abiding by the principles of the rule of law that is evenly applied to every single person, that no man is above the law. It's bullshit. These guys are still very much gods. They're very much...
I mean, and Hassan's exactly right here. Like, these people, as of now, the actions of everyone are showing they're above the law.
Much kings that live amongst us, and we think, or rather we delude ourselves into thinking that we can be like them one day, and that's why the system is actually much better. It's far superior. But if you pulled yourself out and approached the issue holistically, you would realize that there is fundamentally no difference between the feudal structure that we used to exist under versus what we have now under liberal capitalism. The only thing is the system defends itself a lot better.
Thames Valley Police is able to provide an update in relation to investigation into the offence of misconduct in public office.
It's no longer under Mountbatten Wind.
Welcome, Christy. For some reason, the chat keeps on blocking me from saying all sorts of things tonight, but so I'll say it verbally. We're going over former Prince Andrew being arrested, and we've gone over Piers Morgan, Hassan, Dr. Grande, Law and Crime Network. We went over a Voidzilla, which is CoffeeZilla, in the very first video. Next, we'll be going over Zateo. I shift over to Megyn Kelly or some other Republican. We'll see.
It's Andrew Mountbatten. No Windsor. No Prince. I see a path. I know you do too. Billionaires versus solidarity. Yes. Billionaires are functionally no different than the tyrants of the old ages. Tyrants, the monarchs, the lords, right? The reality is they now have more power than even the symbolic monarchs do. It's clear under liberal capitalism, a billionaire has more power than a monarch does. Okay, a prince can receive more scrutiny from the system, albeit symbolic, albeit as a sacrificial lamb to throw some red meat in the face of the masses to make them feel like the system is still working. It is clear that Les Wexner, Leon Black, and even some of their more prominent servants like Mendelsohn in the UK or even Keir Starmer will receive less penalties than a monarch does. Yeah, I saw. This is what he looked like too, which is really funny. History repeats, and it rhymes, but it also repeats. This is what I said. Tell me the U.S. doesn't have the same power structure as monarchs of the old, when you have princes receiving more legal scrutiny in the UK than we offer our oligarchs who are just as compromised by Epstein. This is the great lie of liberal capitalism. Now, of course, it's been released, but I'm just saying, like, who's gotten their fingerprints? Who's gotten their photos taken? Who's been perp walked in the United States of America amongst the wealthiest Epstein class? Who? British press working overtime, including Emily Matlow, who famously conducted that train wreck interview with Andrew and Hate My Country's Media. This is a pretty grave moment.
The reasons I'm gobsmacked is because there is something very personal in this as well. And we talk a lot about people's sort of state of mind and health and all the rest of it. And I suppose I do feel, I feel concern actually as I'm watching this story unfold.
Why?
And I suppose that two things can be simultaneously true, that it can have been a long time coming, but when it does, there is somebody at the center of it, and it is a father, and there are children.
What? Dude, I swear to God, every British person has a chip in their brain. I swear to God. They have a surf chip and it activated. Lady, you cooked his ass. You played a more significant role in moving this along than the average person did. Okay. And for that, I thank you. This got to be out of context or something, but I just don't understand how this can be in context at all. How can you be so servile? Like, what the Pretty grave moment, sighs Emily Maitlis, the same journalist who once watched Prince Andrew tie himself in the knots, denying he could sweat. How noble the sudden tenderness for a man whose closest friends ran an international trafficking ring. One almost feels for him. Almost. The real grave moments, of course, belong to the girls who never got royal protection or a sympathetic interview on LBC. Priorities. This doesn't make any sense, because you know who else had fathers, had sisters, had daughters later down the line, loved ones? The victims of Andrew Mountbatten. Everybody's got family. The do you mean? Oh, wow. We have to offer our condolences and our sympathy to this like true villain. If we cannot establish that there are real villains, even in this like liberal structure that we exist in, this liberal hegemony that we exist under, if we cannot say an international sex trafficker and their closest associates are villains, no one is a villain. There are no villains.
Hassan's correct here about this too. And this is honestly one issue that should bring the sides together more than anything, and should bring to surface the two wings of the same bird, not the actual ideologies, but in practice, the parties, Republican and Democrat, two wings of the same bird. Now, ideologically speaking, they're very different, right? But in practice, they're more similar than they are different in terms of the politicians, right? So don't forget that. So notice also there are some people trying to twist this into other issues as well. I've seen some people try to make it about race, some people try to make it about vaccines, and some people making it about other things. It's like, no, how about we come together on this one thing? Because why not? We could all be against this, right?
Villains at that point. You know who the villain is? You. If you are as a working class individual, you're a villain. If you're as a king, as a prince, then you're a victim. You're a victim of your own, you're a victim of this system. It's crazy. Offer more sympathy to people who have done wrong, not, participated in international sex trafficking of children, of course, but just like, done crimes of circumstance, engaged in crimes of circumstance. Offer more sympathy to those people than you do to the people at the tippy top. What are we doing? I feel like people's priorities are completely swapped for some crazy reason. We need to be more sympathetic to the working poor that ends up stealing because they want to feed their family, whether it's a Gucci bag or not. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? You can't sell the bread. Bread can't actually substitute for rent. Gucci bags can, right? I don't understand it. I don't understand how you can just look at a system or look at victims of systemic forces and not offer them a shred of sympathy, but then you find all the sympathy in the end for a guy who is objectively like a straight up comic book villain, like so evil that it's comical almost. Unfortunately, it's not funny at all, because it's real life and there are real victims. She's saying that she has, she's reflecting on the moment of former Prince Andrew getting arrested and thinking, well, this person is a father.
Simultaneously true, that it can have been a long time coming.
Well, this person's a father. I mean, shouldn't that make him know better?
But when it does, there is somebody at the center of it, and it is a father, and there are children, and there is a mental health question. And I suppose that's what's sort of holding me back a bit and saying this is a pretty serious moment. You know, it's a grave moment. It's not a sort of jumping up and down moment.
No, of course not.
What does that even mean? What does that even mean? Who remembers Emily Maitlis sat in front of a backdrop of Corbyn with a Photoshop hat in Kremlin? BBC fine with that, but not with her remarks about Cummings. Yeah, BBC's fine with this, but not her remarks about Prince Andrew either. LBC. Now she's at LBC talking about Prince Andrew being a victim of the system. It's like, no, it's crazy to me that you could just sit there. What about it with your posh accent on mainstream television, on a mainstream news outlet? What about the feelings of the international pedophilic cabal? What about it? Yeah, I don't care, man.
The definition of whataboutism, right?
I mean, call me.
And that's what some therapists will do, unfortunately, too, when someone's being narcissistically abused. Oh, why don't you put yourself in their shoes and try to understand where they're coming from? They must have been abused themselves, you know, to even have NPD. Now, those of you who have seen my interviews with Dr. Salerno, you would know very well that we dispute that point a lot, right? Where we say trauma is not what causes personality disorders. It doesn't make anything better, but that's different than being in the cause. And that's kind of what this person's doing a little bit too. Not Hassan, but the woman.
Too woke. Call me woke, but I don't give a about the feelings of international sex traffickers and members of the Epstein class. You know who does, though? And there is like elite solidarity there. Donald Trump. Here's what Donald Trump had to say when asked about the arrest of the former Prince Andrew.
It's not a good one, Peter. What do you think?
I got a question about something big overseas today. The former Prince Andrew arrested by the police there, related to something with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think people in this country at some point, associates of Jeffrey Epstein, will wind up in handcuffs too?
Well, you know, I'm the expert in a way because I've been totally exonerated.
I'm the expert at being a participant in the pedophile class. POG, I call it pedophile occupied government. I'm the expert of pedophilia. Totally exonerated. Have you been totally exonerated? I don't think so. I'm the least guilty man in America. From the standpoint of pedophilia, no one is less guilty than me.
That's very nice. I can actually speak
Shane Gillis has a better Trump than Hassan. I'll give him that.
about it very nicely. I think it's a shame. I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. It's a very, very sad. To me, it's a very sad thing. When I see that, it's a very sad thing to see it and to see what's going on with his brother, who's obviously coming to our country very soon, and he's a fantastic man, the king. So I think it's a very sad thing.
It's a real shame that the pedophilic prince is receiving a little bit of scrutiny from the legal system, just like a little bit. He's out already. He's not like, you know, he's not going to remain in prison, I don't think. I mean, we'll see where it goes, but like, it's a real shame. You know, I think to myself, on the one hand, a pedophile friend of mine had to get a little bit of interrogation today. And on the other hand, another shame. South Korea, folks. South Korea. Coming after, they're calling him an insurrectionist. They're calling him an insurrectionist. They gave him life in prison. A real shame, folks. Soul of my life, former South Korean President Yoon.
So what Dr. Salerno and I say is the literature states things like empathy deficits are very heritable, right? There's most of personality is genetic. And that's why there's an expression, parenting is important, but it doesn't make much of a difference. Dr. Keith Campbell, who I interviewed, says that. Dr. Robert Plomin, who is a geneticist, says that. So it's just people underplayed in the past the importance of biology and genetics. They were thinking things were more environmental. And again, that's not to say the environment is meaningless. It's not to say trauma doesn't make things worse. But I think a lot of it is innate.
Suck Yeol sentenced to life imprisonment with labor for leading an insurrection over his failed martial law declaration. I will be demanding his release.
Really interesting because nobody used to speak about Epstein when he was alive, but now they speak. But I'm the one that can talk about it because I've been totally exonerated. I did nothing. In fact, the opposite. He was against me. He was fighting me in the election.
Now, we can go over a video that Voidzilla goes and says where he kind of points out a Trump lie with that. and maybe we'll do that at another point.
Which I just found out through the last 3 million pages of documents.
So, of course, he says he's exonerated. Of course he does. God damn it.
Good afternoon, good evening, friends. We have breaking new developments on.
So this is Ro Khanna. This is the person I was talking about in with Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
The Jeffrey Epstein files, reporting live for today. Of course, I'm Prem Tucker, and joining us now is one of the lawmakers who's been leading the fight for transparency and justice on the files related to Jeffrey Epstein and his internationally spanning network of associates. From DC, Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you for sharing your time with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So to start, today was meant to be the beginning of more transparency with regards to the Epstein files. Can you first explain to our viewers, before we get into what exactly you saw, what was supposed to happen today and why was more transparency needed in the first place?
Well, there are so many redactions of what was released. There are about 3 million documents that haven't been released. We already have an exposure of so many of the most powerful people in our country, and an exposure that is bringing down the potential British government, the British monarchy, the Norwegian monarchy. But that shows that there's still things they're hiding. And so today, Massie and I went and saw what was supposed to be the unredacted files. We saw two things. One, we saw 6 men whose names were protected that shouldn't have been redacted, only in 2 hours. There may be many, many more. And secondly, we saw that many of the files themselves were still redacted. Even the portions that we were seeing were redacted by the FBI, were redacted by the grand jury. So they are protecting these rich and powerful people.
So when you arrived to look at the
No lies detected so far.
files, what was sort of the physical setup? Is it like a room? And what kinds of things are you allowed or not allowed to do? What sort of limitations do you face as a member of Congress?
Well, it was a room. We had the assistance of justice staff. They were actually very polite and helpful. They helped us do the searches on the documents. They were not to blame. They were just ministerial. But the problem was that the documents that they were having us see, the quote unquote unredacted versions, were already redacted. And then I asked the Justice Department, why are these redacted? They said, well, we didn't do the redactions. That's how it came from the FBI. That's how it came from the grand jury. So that's a blatant violation of the law. The Epstein Act required.
And okay, he's going to say what I was about to say. But what I was going to say was, yeah, some people were trying to say, though, they were redacted because when there's victims in accordance to the law, they have to be. But no, there was an Epstein amendment to say, no, there shouldn't be redactions. And that's what Ro Khanna is about to say.
The FBI to unredact those documents, not to protect people. And we know that the Trump administration ordered FBI agents to be going through these files for months, making these redactions, and no one has unredacted it. So they're in blatant violation of the law.
How easy is it for a member of Congress with this newfound access to look at these supposedly, as you said, unredacted files? How easy is it for you to look through these files in the first place?
It's fairly easy, but it's cumbersome. I mean, we have a whole job to do. We can't spend weeks and weeks and weeks just going through every file. The cursory glance we did through the file showed that there are already 6 people who were co-conspirators whose names should not have been protected and the Justice Department protected. But the broader issue, the bigger issue, is that the 302 files where the survivors made the statements.
So 6 people's names shouldn't have been protected, but they have been. And we learned from the Piers Morgan debate there that one of them was Les Wexner.
Implicating rich and powerful men who raped these underage girls, those are still redacted. Those are redacted even for members of Congress. And that's the information.
And I'm glad you mentioned him, Hot Ham. Bannon is looking pretty guilty in a lot of this. He is very close to Epstein.
That the American people want to know. Who are these powerful people who committed these heinous acts? Who are these people who showed up on Epstein's Island? And the fact is that they are being protected, and it's disgusting.
These 6 men that you mentioned, your colleague Thomas Massie described them as likely incriminated. What can you What do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean about these 6 men exactly?
Well, they're named as co-conspirators in these documents, and some of the co-conspirators' names are redacted appropriately because they may be survivors, and they are women, so at the very least, and so we don't know if they're survivors or not. But they're also caught up in this men, some prominent men from other countries, some prominent men from our country, and there was no reason that Massey or I could see for why those names should be redacted, other than protecting people from embarrassment, which the law clearly says you cannot do.
Is there more you can say on these men? I mean, you mentioned a foreign government and some prominent individuals in this country. What exactly are the contours that you know and can share?
Well, we are calling on the Justice Department to release them, and I hope they will, because
So the comments prove, oh, why aren't you covering the real issues, Jared? Well, I covered Nancy Guthrie, and he mentioned, oh, grandma missing. Well, yeah, I covered that for a while. And when I covered that, Jared, why aren't you covering the real issues? I cover a real issue. Oh, Jared, why aren't you covering the real issues? Well, what's the real issue then? Venezuela taking Maduro? What's the real issue? The economy? That's what Pam Bondi would want you to think. Well, yes, the Dow's doing great. So what else? Other kinds of corruption? Well, this is the glue. This brings a lot of the corruption together here, this whole case. So, I mean, what's more important than this? I mean, there's other things also important. Don't get me wrong. Critical thinking. And that's kind of what I hope to do on this channel. Demonstrate my thinking process where people can take it or leave it, take what they like, and leave the rest.
So blatant, and maybe it was an oversight. I don't know, but it looks like these men were being protected for some reason. So we're working through the avenues to get these names released through the Justice Department.
As you were looking through the files today, was there anything additionally that you learned or surprised you, or anything that jumped out at you?
Just the gruesomeness of some of the acts. I mean, there were violent images. There was real abuse of these young girls. There are prominent people who are talked about as having had sex or raped these underage girls, because those names are blotted out as survivors, but it's obvious that prominent individuals did that. And the sense that so many of our elite were caught up in this. The thing that angers me is that America has not had a moral reckoning like Britain is having, like other countries are having. I mean, how is Howard Lutnick there when he is all over the files and he's still a Commerce Secretary? He's had no accountability. I mean, the British government may fall because of Mendelsohn, and here you've got Commerce Secretary Lutnick, who has financial interactions with Epstein after he was convicted of pedophilia, alleged financial allegations, and he's still there.
That's actually a good segue. I'm glad you brought this up. For those who might not be familiar, the former UK ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, has lost his job and his authorities, his roles in wake of revelations tying him to Epstein. And so I on a finer point, I'm curious, this is a very specific example, but there are several nations undergoing these kinds of rifts and reckonings with regards to these powerful individuals in their own countries, investigating them or pushing for them to step down. What do you make as a member of Congress specifically of figures, let alone President Trump or Elon Musk, but specifically someone like Howard Lutnick as well, being shielded from even earnest investigation that you and Massey and others are pushing for?
Well, it's trivializing to the survivors. It shows that we are not really taking it seriously as Americans, the way other countries are. I mean, either we're going to have a moral reckoning or we're not. We've exposed a lot of these men. They're being shamed online, but that's not enough. There has to be actual accountability. They need to be held accountable for the jobs they have at the very least. I mean, there need to be investigations if they've committed crimes. And until we have elite accountability, we're going to see an erosion of trust in the very democratic project. And that's why I coined the phrase Epstein class. That's why I said that this Epstein class needs to be held accountable and needs to go.
Representative Jamie Raskin today said that after reviewing the documents, there was evidence of victims as young as 9 years old. Is this something that you or your colleagues encountered as well as while you were scrolling through these files? And how do you react to something as shocking as that?
Yes, they were. And some of those documents are all.
Did you hear what he said? Victims as young as 9. And here's the other thing to take note of. All of the politicians in America, the congressmen, women senators, I'm pretty sure they know. I think they've read it. They've read it. So now, if they don't try their best to get it out, they're enabling. That's what I would say. Some are enabling, some are outright being flying monkeys. And my definition or my difference between a flying monkey and an enabler is all flying monkeys are enablers, because an enabler is someone that's more passive and it's what they don't do. Flying monkeys are offensive and they will commit abuse by proxy. So if they do something, they read the files. At the best, they're just an enabler, unless they're someone like Ro Khanna or Thomas Massie. But at worst, they're a flying monkey, or even worse than a flying monkey, they're actually dead guilty and in the files, right?
Already public. Now, some of those documents, the reason that the sender has been redacted is that there could be a potential survivor who's also being the sender. And there are certain survivors who may have been caught up in also being part of Epstein's sex trafficking network. But in certain cases, the redactions make no sense and they're protecting people. And so what you see is the Justice Department in a few cases having done appropriate jobs to redact, but having not redacted a lot of the main documents that are protecting this Epstein class.
Liking this video? Then don't just watch, hit like, share, and subscribe. And tap the bell so you never miss a video.
And speaking of Mehdi Hasan, if you like my video and commentary, what are you doing? Like the video. Likes are free. Super chats are a great way to get questions answered. There's also a great flock of black sheep in the live chat here. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I go live every night to talk about true crime and current events, and I use my unique perspective with personal experience with mental health addiction and narcissistic abuse to go over those topics.
Live show. But if you want early access to exclusive content, then you have to head to Zateo.com and subscribe now. You'll be supporting fearless, independent journalism.
You know, you've spoken.
That's the thing. Silence enables abuse to continue. Silence always helps the perpetrators, never the victims. Remember that.
About the sort of haphazard ways that these files have been redacted. From what you could tell, were there files that you were perhaps expecting to see or looking for, or ones that you noticed that were in fact just missing?
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. And Massie made the same point. There are two problems. One is the prosecution memo, which talked about who else should be charged. All of that was still redacted in the version we saw. The statements from survivors to the FBI naming other men, particularly in the United States, all of that was still redacted. But then there were documents that were missing, such as the tip sheet about Donald Trump and other documents that were pulled down. And we thought at least those documents would be there. They're missing too. So it's obvious that the FBI had gone through documents and protected certain people. They don't even hide that. They were very clear that the FBI was doing this. Then they sent those files over to Justice. Some of Justice actually probably did their job. They were going through documents that already were redacted, protecting survivors' identity. In certain cases, they missed that. In certain cases, they overprotected people who were predators. But the reality is they were given a set of documents that already had the redactions. So I don't blame actually the assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York as much as I blame the political leadership that told the FBI and the grand jury to redact this before the lawyers even saw them at Justice.
Let's talk about that political leadership a bit more. I mean, you mentioned how you coined the term the Epstein class. Tell us a bit more about the genesis of how you got that term and what it means to you, and how do you view that as a sort of oppositional term to run on?
Rich and powerful people feel they were above the law. They think that their law doesn't apply to them, that they have done so well in life, either by building companies or making money or their status, that they are part of this elite club and they don't have to deal with ordinary things like rules. They don't have to worry about discarding or raping a young girl or being part of that if it's for their own gratification or their own social status. And so the Epstein class is a group of people who do not believe that the rules apply to them, who act with impunity. And my belief is that for the democratic project to succeed, we need to begin with elite accountability. We need to begin with the prosecution and at least investigation of these people, the holding them accountable in public, and not just of this Epstein class, but the impunity that we see the Trump administration acting with the killing people in the Caribbean, with the ICE agents who are killing Renee Good and Alex Preti and American citizens, with the people who dismantled agencies without any authorization. If you have lawlessness, if you have the rule of individuals based on whim, then you do not have democracy. And until there is public accountability of the elites, we're not going to restore the democratic project.
There's a lot of people in our live chat, a lot of viewers who are, the first thing they said to you was thank you, Representative Ro Khanna, for pushing on this. And you're kind of getting at this sort of deep structural imbalance where it seems like there's a pretty broad consensus amongst the American public for what should happen here. And yet there is this impunity that you talk about that seeps into other ways that this administration behaves. Where does this go from here? How does the public reconcile with that? What are they supposed to do?
The public needs to elect people to Congress and the Senate and ultimately the presidency who are going to hold people in power to account. Why is it that for decades we haven't seen justice here? It wasn't just that Trump protected these people and betrayed a promise. We haven't seen this for decades. I mean, the original complaint to the FBI was in 1996. Why aren't other members of Congress, haven't they come along and taken the side of the survivors? Julia Brown has been reporting on this for years. And the reason is because you offend some very powerful people. You offend people at the highest echelons of society. And these are the people who fund the super PACs. These are the people who give money to politicians. Many of the people who have been exposed are people on the left. It's some of the biggest donors to the Democratic Party. Keir Starmer, someone I knew, I met, and yet his government is at risk. And so Thomas Massie and I have made more enemies than we made friends. And that's usually not the way of doing politics. Usually the way to do politics is you want to have a politics of addition. You want to make more and more friends.
Yeah, so Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, they're also like the black sheep of a dysfunctional family system. When you speak up and tell the truth, you get ridiculed and blamed and scapegoated.
It's not enemies. And that is why we haven't had people to actually expose the Epstein class. But Massie and I are mavericks. We're different. We've met these survivors. It's become personal. And we've said that we are willing to take the risk of offending some of the most powerful people in society.
So as a flock of black sheep, we should recognize Ro Khanna is a black sheep of the Democrat side. Thomas Massie is a black sheep of the Republican side. So again, black sheep don't necessarily have a political affiliation. Remember that.
To see justice.
Today, Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell refused to answer questions during this closed-door congressional deposition. Her lawyer said that she's, in fact, requesting clemency. How do you respond to her refusal to answer questions?
It was an insult to the American people. Just a couple of months ago, she was answering questions to Todd Blanche, and now she isn't able to answer simple questions, such as whether Donald Trump raped underage girls, whether there are other people who raped underage girls. That's not implicating her. That's simply her hiding information. And she's using it as a bargaining chip. She's saying, if you give me clemency, I'll spill the beans. I'll tell you who these people were who raped young girls on Epstein's Island. I said she needs to immediately be sent back to a maximum security prison. It is offensive that someone who engaged in this kind of abuse of young girls and who has...
I mean, the big difference now with the current administration is they all specifically ran on it. They ran on releasing the Epstein files. It's a big part of the reason Trump won. And then people like Dan Bongino were screaming into their podcast mic, we're going to put them all to justice. We're going to get them. It's the most important thing. And then he actually gets put in a position to do something about it. And then what does he do? He fumbles the ball and says, actually, we can't really be doing this. I'm going to retire now and go back to podcasting. Thank you. So it's like, dude, what an embarrassment.
Totally obfuscating to the American people is serving in a low security prison.
Conversely, of course, as she was navigating a closed-door deposition, there's also the Clintons who were requested their presence in late February. What do you make of calls to have them be present to answer questions, and also their own requests to have it be in a sort of public hearing?
It should be public, but they're willing to testify, and that's a good precedent. And you know who's the most concerned is Donald Trump. That's why he's saying don't have Clinton testify, because he knows what this is leading to, that when we have the House, we're going to subpoena him and Lutnick. And by the way, every multi-billionaire and finance and tech leader who has emailed saying that they went to Epstein's Island, they need to come before Congress. They need to answer. What did they know? Who did they see in these islands? What did they do? There hasn't been an investigation. That is what is so shocking. 1,200 survivors, many of them raped as young girls from working class families. And people are just saying, move on, move on. You know, and I know some of these rich people and how they think, oh, let's just keep our name out of the press. Let's be quiet. Let's give some apology statement and then just keep our head down. And then a year from now, 2 years from now, they'll hire a PR agency to rehabilitate. Enough. We need accountability. We need to show the American people that just because you're rich and powerful doesn't mean that you can live by a different set of rules, that they're not two tiers of justice in America, because those two tiers of justice reflect something deeper, which is that income inequality in this country is the highest it's been in 60 years. Workers' share of GDP is the lowest it's been in 75 years. The American people know that this country is working for a few, and it has stopped working for ordinary Americans.
And yeah, you can't really argue that point. I mean, this is a point that a lot of Republicans and conservatives will try to deflect from. But at the end of the day, it's a point. I mean, there's a lot of people who are struggling. You can't deny that. So Dan Carlin would call it, what about the people that are not doing well? Because in any system, if enough people wind up not doing well, then even the elites are going to have a problem, because that's how revolutions happen. Whether it's the Russian Revolution or the French Revolution, that's the one thing they're afraid of. So they'll use all sorts of distractions to keep people from uniting via class. What are the distractions? Sometimes it's sports, the Super Bowl, baseball, football, hockey, basketball. What is it for women? But drama, gossip. That's what I thought the Erica Kirk stuff could be, or fill in the blank with other drama. And yeah, even the Nancy Guthrie stuff can be included in part of that as well. I get it. But those are the things that can kind of occupy people's minds. And not to mention social media. People can spend mindless and endless hours scrolling on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, to a lesser extent, YouTube.
And they want an America that's going to respect everyone again and give every person a stake, both in the justice system and the economic system.
I think one thing that's confused a lot of people is that you and a good amount of Democrats and a handful of Republicans have really been pushing in earnest for the release of these files. Once the vote happened for your and Congressman Massey's act, it was pretty darn unanimous. And at the same time, even though something was so unanimous on paper, there doesn't seem to be according pressure to actually have full transparency. Can you speak to that?
Well, we had to fight so hard every step of the way. We defeated the president, even though he was trying to stop us. But once we passed it, we haven't seen much transparency. It's been a drip, 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 drip. And, you know, I don't understand it from a political perspective, because it's kept the story in the news. Every day that there's this drip, drip, drip makes this the headline news. And it's hurting Donald Trump. It's hurting Donald Trump with his own base. But there must be people so powerful that Donald Trump is willing to take this political hit to his own administration to protect these people. And that's why the American people are dogged in their pursuit of justice here. They know that these people have committed horrible acts and they should be held accountable.
I know we're short on time here, Representative. We just have a few more quick questions. And I know we also have a lot of new viewers that have just joined. I wanted to ask once more, you know, as you look through the files today, the unredacted files or supposedly unredacted files, were there any patterns or instances or moments or things that just stuck with you as you read them? Anything that caught your eye or surprised you?
The extent of the redactions is what stuck with me, that these are documents that have already been scrubbed well before they got to the Justice Department. The second thing that struck me is how many pictures and names were redacted that shouldn't have been redacted. And the third thing that struck me is that a lot of people were involved in this conspiracy, in this sex trafficking scheme. Now, some of those names may have been properly protected in the email you said, because they were women and maybe they were survivors, but it just shows to you how vast the enablers were for Epstein. This was not just Epstein and Maxwell. This was a large network of women and men who were aiding him in committing some of the most horrific crimes of modern time.
Finally, we are at another moment in which, once again, amidst your push for transparency, you get the exact opposite. What exactly do you do here on out? What is next? How are you going to demand more accountability and transparency?
Well, we've overcome the odds at every step. No one thought we would even get a law passed. No one then thought we would get half the files passed, released. No one thought that we would see a day where the British government may fall. No one thought we would see a day where King Charles is having to respond because of tweets I or Massey are putting out. No one thought that we would see the elite in this country exposed in the way that we have. And it's because Massey and I are going to continue to fight with the survivors. It's because the survivors are going to continue to fight. So we won't relent. We will use every legal tool in our toolbox. We will use every congressional power. Ultimately, Congress will flip and we can use the power as majorities. And ultimately, there will be a new president who can make sure that we see justice. It's justice for the survivors, but it is also a new beginning for our democracy. We need truth and reconciliation. We need accountability.
It might sound like he's looping D. Sewell, but he's not wrong. He's not wrong about these points. And Thomas Massey, the Republican, also agrees with these points. And I might think about doing something on Reddit. Reddit to me is more user-friendly than Discord. And the stupid chat wouldn't let me write this, but I said we have a great flock, an amazing flock of black sheep here. I don't know why the YouTube algorithm gods would censor that.
I am tired of a nation where the powerful do bad things and then just walk away, and they leave in their wake all of this damage for other Americans to deal with. We have to have accountability before we can have reconciliation and rebuilding.
We've had a few people ask this question. One final question, which is just, how do you clean up these redactions? If these were meant to be unredacted, how can you get these to be fully unredacted if they're still redacted?
We can go to the court, demand it. We can continue to use public pressure to demand it. Ultimately, maybe it'll take a new president, but I believe we can continue to fight, and we will continue to fight, and the public pressure seems to have worked so far.
Well, I want to thank our listeners for joining us on this very troubling news and for subscribing as we continue to report in depth on these developments. Congressman Khanna, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Please do keep us informed as you and your colleagues continue to work towards accountability and justice for the victims. Thank you, Congressman Khanna.
Thank you, Prem.
Did you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications.
Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on notifications. You can check out Mehdi Hasan and Sateo as well. So I told you I was going to go over the Pam Bondi thing, her stuff. And so Dave Smith went over it. Not Dave Smith, not Pam Bondi strikes again. Pam Bondi strikes the first time.
Out of their pension, couldn't even possibly.
You don't want to play the stupid song?
So, Perryville, Maryland, at this great brewery spot, that's what's happened today. Now, of course, for the last couple weeks, the Epstein files have been dominating the news and dominating this show, because how could it not? Yesterday, Pam Bondi, the sitting attorney general, went and testified before Congress about the Epstein files. And I think it can only objectively be described as a legendary meltdown. I mean, something, it really was unlike anything I've ever seen before. You were kind of wondering as it was approaching, what can she possibly say here? I mean, it looks so bad for her, the whole administration, but her.
So this is Dave Smith, part of the problem, and this is his co-host here, Robbie the Fire Bernstein. They are libertarians.
As much as any other individual are just totally caught with their pants down. They lied their ass off. It's been proven that they lied. I mean, it was down to the fact that she had to testify 24 hours after Massey had proven that the Justice Department had illegally redacted the name of a co-conspirator in child sex trafficking. Anyway, you were wondering what could she possibly say? Well, if you haven't already heard, we're going to find out because she gets asked those questions precisely. But you were almost wondering, like, what can she possibly say when she goes into this? And it does feel to me, I know I've made this comparison before, but almost like the only propaganda campaigns that I can compare them to, they're the two worst ones I've ever seen. It's this one, the Epstein files, and behind closed doors, Biden is sharp as a tack. And you're just like, you almost can't believe that's what you went with. Like, was there a meeting and people settled on this is okay? Were there any dissidents there? Was there anyone at the meeting who went, I don't know if this is the right way to handle it? But either way, this is what ended up happening.
In a
Go ahead.
way, it was a flawless performance. And allow me to explain.
Yeah.
If you had some sort of reasonable explanation for the handling, or you even wanted to say,
okay,
it's the one that's been going super viral. There's several that are great, but this one was, it was just unbelievable. What can you say? Take it away, Attorney General Pam Bondi.
The Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about.
So, what does that sound like to you? This is a Epstein files hearing, and here she is talking about the Dow and the stock market. What is that? That's a deflection. That's moving the goalposts. That is whataboutism, right? It's anything to address the point. These are all narcissistic tactics that they'll use, and you'll see them on the individual level, and clearly you'll see it from the Attorney General.
We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does the Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
What does the Dow have to do anything is a great question, though. And she's like, are you kidding? Trying to gaslight them into thinking that it's actually ridiculous to be asking such a reasonable question. Yes, what does the Dow Jones have to do with Epstein? Are you kidding me? How dare you ask that?
Jordan, Mr. Jordan, committee. The Dow.
Okay.
The Dow.
Just to be clear here, she goes, what does that have to do with anything they asked? And it's because this is...
What's love got to do with it? Who's saying that? Whitney Houston or someone else?
A hearing on Jeffrey Epstein. And you, ma'am, are the Attorney General. What are you talking about? Like, she's just getting creamed. And so she just pivots to the Dow is high. Is really just unbelievable. This woman runs the Justice Department. What does this even have to do with anything? And it seems like essentially she's just trying to not get fired. So she's just playing to Donald Trump and going, Donald Trump's amazing. This hearing should be about how Donald Trump's amazing. I don't know, Rob, what can you say?
I mean,
and now is Tina Turner, what's love got to do with it? Who needs a heart when a heart can be broken?
Firstly, my ears still hurt from listening to this meeting.
Oh,
she just comes off like an absolutely raging lunatic, and pivoting from, instead of answering your question, I'm going to campaign for Donald Trump and talk about what we should be. Well, that's not what this is about, nor is that your job. Your job has nothing to do with the stock market or really how Donald Trump is performing as a president. You're not here to campaign for Donald Trump. You're actually not part of the White House. You're the Justice Department. That's a different role. And we're talking about that part, which has a lot to do with American safety, actually. We're actually very specifically criticizing a lane by which a lot of Americans feel unsafe because they think that there's a deep state apparatus, which might include intelligence agencies, that are working against American women and kids. That's a real reason why.
By the way, if you're here and you haven't liked the video, likes are free. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already.
A lot of us feel unsafe is this two-tier justice system and the way that you covered up for this. One of my other big takeaways was the heel turn of some characters. Jim Jordan was legendary through COVID, and he's kind of letting her get away with murder the whole meeting. And every single Republican that didn't take the opportunity to ask her about what was going on with Epstein, but instead pivoted to other topics to basically fill time, I think they showed their cards 100% of being disinterested in this topic and covering for the administration.
Well, 100%. 100%. That's right. Couldn't agree with all of that more. One thing, and I can't help myself but have a little bit of an autistic libertarian moment here, because this is totally beside the point, and just to your point, yes, this is a total distraction and has nothing to do with the Epstein hearing. I just so pathetic that she would just turn into a Trump cheerleader and try to say somehow that it's like, I'm sorry. It was when I saw this clip the first time, I fucking laughed because it's ridiculous to be talking about this. And as I'm watching it back here with you now, I'm laughing again at it. And then she goes, "What are you laughing at?" Like both times I was laughing. And then she goes, "What are you laughing at?" And you go, "Oh, we're laughing at you for being ridiculous. Like we're laughing at your pathetic, desperate attempt to change the subject to anything other than the fucking the sex trafficking that you're protecting." Like, I don't know. But I'd be remiss if I did not just make the point that it is also just the lowest IQ political brag that, oh, the Dow Jones is high. Look at the S&P numbers. They're at all-time highs. As if like I know a bunch of people have already made this joke, but it's like, she's literally going like, "Listen, yes, we protected all the people in the Epstein files, but just so you know, they're all doing really great in the stock market right now." Like, I don't even know the numbers exactly. I think, double check me on this, but I think it's something like it's close to half of the country is just not in the market at all. Maybe it's like 40% or something like that. But like 40% of Americans don't have retirement accounts. 40% of Americans, you know what I'm saying? Like there's, you go look at those numbers about how many people can't put together $1,000 without using credit card debt in case of an emergency. Like, so even when you're bragging about how high the stock market is, to anybody who's not doing well, that is just meaningless to them. Like essentially, and in the same sense, Rob, as like if housing prices are going up, that's nice if you own a house. That really sucks if you're trying to buy a house, right? Like if you're a first-time home buyer, if you're in your 30s and you've been saving money, you know what I mean? Maybe you got like a little bit of money saving toward a down payment and the price of housing shoots up, well, you're screwed. You know what I mean? That ruins your... Well, in the same sense, if you're not in the stock market and the stock market shoots through the roof, that
Cat thinks that it's Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins on the right. Is that bald dude discrimination, Cat? Bill Burr discrimination? This guy on the right's Robbie the Fire Bernstein. He doesn't say much. He usually just listens to Dave Smith talk for about 50 minutes. And he'll talk for like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe.
It just means the barrier to entry is that much higher for you. It's just that much more expensive to buy in now. So it's also like, that's not a brag for those people. In fact, I don't know, Rob, am I misremembering this? But didn't our buddy Ryan Long, that is, hilarious comedian, didn't he have a sketch about this? I think he had a sketch. I think it was I think it was during lockdowns when the stock market hit its all-time high. And then he had like a sketch about, it was like roommates were like the stock market and the real economy. And like one of them's like all sick and dying. And then the stock market guy is just like doing rails of coke. It was a real funny sketch. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this right. But to be clear, you know which other president bragged about a record high stock market? Rob, do you remember? All of them. This is why this is what an inflationary economy is. George W. Bush bragged about
and this is a good point. Regardless of who's in office, the stock has always gone up over time, right? It goes up and down within the time, but overall, it goes up. This is true.
record high stock market. Barack Obama bragged about it. Donald Trump the first time bragged about it. Joe Biden in the middle of lockdowns bragged about it. And now Donald Trump's bragging about it again. It's all a complete, we flood the economy with money and the price of everything keeps going up and up and up. That's proof that we're doing a bang up job. No, it's not. Actually, hold on one second. Here, you could say, go ahead, Rob, if you wanted to say something. I just want to pull one thing up.
Yeah, well, I did laugh about any time they brag about the stock market because I just never feel that good that this thing's going up forever. And are you going to take the other side of it if it goes down? But obviously, it was just an irrelevant pivot. And the fact that she came in with a binder of insults, I have clapbacks and I'm going to yell them at you.
All right. They went over the parts I wanted to go over. So it wasn't really that long. But that's probably a good place to end here for the night. I wanted to do the experiment to go over to see what the Epstein files would do for us on the channel. And former Prince Andrew, mind you. But if you're still here, please remember to like the video. I don't think we're going to hit 1,000 likes. I don't know how many we're at. But whatever it is, the answer is more likes. I got a fever, and it's only cured by more likes and subscriptions. But memberships also help the channel. Super chats help the channel. Super stickers help the channel. And there's a great flock of black sheep here too. And have you guys seen the Billy Corgan versus Bill Burr thing where they were pretending to be one another? That was kind of interesting. 602 OC girl, that's not good. We have a different crowd because we talked about a different topic, or a little bit of a different topic. Thank you, Punk Rock Jenny. Glad to have you here. You wouldn't see Heather tonight or Ellie or George. Stevie Nicks is great. Is Stevie Nicks the gold dust woman or is someone else? All right. So the likes slowly creep in here. And maybe there'll be Nancy Guthrie news for tomorrow night. Or maybe we'll go back into some CoffeeZilla videos, Voidzilla videos to recap what has happened with the Epstein files. Or maybe there'll be something else. You never know. I'm actually very happy that we've gotten to a place here where I can talk about several different kinds of current events and it's still good. Like people will still be here. I wasn't sure if that was going to be the case, but it's still the case. So I love that. I love that there's people here regardless of the topic. That's important to me. R.I.P. Christine McVeigh. Who's that? I know the guy from, I think it was Grey's Anatomy, passed away recently. You think so, Tim? You think they're going to find her in Mexico? I mean, nothing will surprise me, but I kind of think they're running out of time. More likes is right, Livin. And I think also, though, the guy whose initials are LD, his lawyer, I was actually thinking about making that the thumbnail tonight, but I didn't. But his lawyer made a statement, oh, he has nothing to do with it. Okay. Yes, that's who it is, OC. Yeah, I saw that, Tim. He would cross the border. Which means what? It means to me they have no idea. They have no idea in America. They have no idea where she is. They don't know whether she's alive. They know nothing. Thank you, Diesel. I appreciate you being here and your support. I try to make it educational, interesting, and entertaining. That's the goal here. Yeah, Punk Rock, he did. He did. And I would say that the odds that they're going to find her alive now are low. 98-2, I would say. 98% no. 2% maybe. I just don't know how she'd be alive this whole time. And where would she even be in America if she was in America? I just don't know. In Mexico somewhere? It's wild. You think so, Kat? You gotta lock him out? Oh, that'd be terrible. But can't be letting the best reporter not come back into America. What do they think this is? Peach, I think they have no idea. That's what I think. I think they have no idea. And I don't know what's going to change. They need a body, though. I mean, real question for the chat. Does anyone ever get charged with murder with no body, with no evidence? Does that ever happen? Not that I know of. I think usually, at the least, you need a body or it's just disappearance, right? Let me know, chat. He also reported the email came into TMZ that she died. Is that true? Did TMZ report that? I mean, we'll have to see, right? I don't like so here's a hypothetical. So it's been 19 days now. How long would it take without any evidence of her for them to reclassify this? Bella in the chat said 2 years. It can take 2 years. So when would you reclassify this as a homicide? I don't know. I got to brush up my law degree, pull out my law books, because I really don't know the answer to that. But ChatGPT might know the answer. Although I don't like relying on ChatGPT too much. Let's see what it says, though. How long before a disappearance before a missing person is classified a homicide? Is ChatGPT always wrong? We'll see. We'll see if it's wrong. There is no fixed amount of time after which a missing person is automatically classified as a homicide. Instead, law enforcement classifies a case based on evidence, not the calendar. How it actually works. And if you guys noticed, everyone sounds like they talk like ChatGPT now in comments and in videos. I see it. They always do the, oh, if it's not this, it's this. That's not connection. That's control. They do that. If it's not this, it's that. That's not this, it's this. It's like, oh, stop it. I hate that. But I see it everywhere. Did the sheriff say that, Crab? It probably depends on the topic, right, Em? Maybe it's mirroring you, Cat, giving you sass right back. Police may reclassify a missing person case as a homicide when one or more of the following are present: evidence of violence, blood, DNA, signs of a struggle, weapons, damaged property, or forensic evidence, witness statements, including an assault. So we have blood, a little DNA, but enough to say a homicide? No, I don't think so. At least not yet. Credible threats or motive: prior threats, domestic violence, stalking, ongoing disputes, abuse of coercive control, financial, custody, or relationship motives. We don't see any of that. Abrupt, uncharacteristic disappearance. This one applies. Leaving behind phone, wallet, car, medication, children, pets. No activity on bank accounts, phone, or social media. Missed work, court, school, or caregiving duties with no explanation. Contradictory or deceptive behavior. Inconsistent stories from last known contacts. Attempts to clean scenes, destroy evidence, or mislead investigators. Delays in reporting the person missing. Intelligence or confessions. Informants, recorded statements, admissions, digital evidence, text, locations, data, searches. Important clarifications. A body is not required to classify a homicide or even to prosecute one. Many homicide cases begin as missing persons cases. Some cases remain missing for years before being reclassified. Others are treated as homicide within days if evidence warrants it. Well, that's what they say. So, given all that, though, it just means we don't know. We don't know. I think in this case, they're going to really hold off on classifying it a homicide, I think. maybe 6 months to a year. Ah, that's a good one. So OC Girl says, Aruban prosecutors closed the case on Anne Holloway in December 2007, and Holloway was declared legally dead in January 2012 at her father's request. That's also true. We may never know is right. Kat says, it gives me sass when I tell it to stop calling me by my nickname, Bunny. It does it anyway and gets mad at me. How does it know your nickname is Bunny, Kat? Where did he say that, Crob? Where did the sheriff say homicide? They just classified her house as a crime scene yesterday. You would have thought it was a crime scene from day one. I mean, I thought it was, but then they opened it up and then they closed it again. And now it's officially a crime scene. So, Crob, are you telling the truth about that? I don't know if you are. Okay. Was that today, OC, or another day? I mean, there might not be any closure on this case for a while now. I mean, outside of a body, how do you see closure? Finding her alive or not alive, what would the closure be? You may as well at this point, right? Because you just as easily could be dealing with a homicide, right? Did you know that Nanos has his own reality show on A&E? Desert Law, Pima County. It premiered mid-January. No, I did not know that. I haven't heard anything about it. I'm surprised they haven't said anything about it. How often are you going to undate your chat on the Jeffrey Epstein files? I don't know what that means. Is that so, Tim? I mean, I can't blame her. I mean, it's not like she needs the money or anything. She's just working at her leisure now, Savannah. I mean, the sheriff's got an ego. Sounds like he does some word salad stuff. He likes the attention. It's just too much. It's just too much. Yeah, I didn't know we had a show, but maybe this is things that we can go over tomorrow. Because if I talk about Guthrie tomorrow, we can go over it. All right. But anyway, that's really all I had for tonight. Make sure you like the video while you're here. Subscribe to the channel if you are not already. Hit that notification bell. And I'll talk about true crime and current events every night. I use my experience with mental health, addiction, and narcissistic abuse to give my unique perspective on those things. And there's a great flock of black sheep here in the live chat. The best part about it, I'd say, right? Pima County Sheriff is from Mayberry with Andy. You got it, Dana. Thanks for being here. That would make sense, Tim, if Savannah's worried about her kid's safety, for sure. Thank you, Teresa. You got it, Jeff. So everyone, cat, baked cat. I forgot. We got, not only do we have a bear and an old bear, we have a cat and a baked cat. But Sable Blonde's a cat as well. Yeah, I think the other people, former Under Sheriff Rick Castiger and the other guy, they would love to see Sheriff Nanos replaced too. Absolutely. You have a good night, Tim, Cat, Allison, Baked Cat, Kat, Teresa, Jolly's not here anymore. Danielle's not here anymore. But Krob, Louis, and everyone else, thanks to Living, and Songbit Sarah for modding. But all right. Over and out, everybody. Till next time.